Good morning. I thought that would wake us up a little bit. But indeed, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a very, very warm Dubai welcome to the Sustainable Trade Africa Conference. We are thrilled to have you here today at the Jasper One Convention Center here in Dubai. My name is Victor Oladokun, and it's a pleasure, it really is an honor to be your MC for what promises to be a game-changing conference and summit today. We are gathered to explore and discuss several critical and really crucial issues surrounding sustainable trade practices at this event titled and themed Transforming Africa, Trade for Climate Resilience and Sustainable Development. But beyond that, this is an event that affords us an opportunity, really, to strengthen the ties between the UAE and Africa and vice versa. This is a visionary initiative designed to galvanize critical stakeholders from across the continent and the UAE for what promises to be an engaging and really insightful conference with high-level representation, keynotes, panel discussions, B2B meetings, and several networking opportunities. Let's get started this morning. I trust that you've had your coffee, you've had your breakfast, and we're good to go. As we say in this part of the world, Assalamu alaikum. Before we get going, I'd like to crave your indulgence and take care of a few housekeeping issues. If you'd be kind enough to either switch off your phones or mute them so that we can avoid any interruptions, that would be most appreciated. I'd like to thank you for your cooperation. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, delegates, media partners, and visitors, ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to this Sustainable Trade Africa Conference organized by the UAE Trade Center. We'd like to thank and express our deepest gratitude to our co-organizer, Africa Export-Import Bank, AfriExim, for unwavering commitment to sustainability and for very generous support. You've been very instrumental in bringing this Sustainable Trade Africa Conference to fruition. We'd also like to express sincere thanks to other partners, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, the African Development Bank Group, DP World, Africa Finance Corporation, DC Global, Africa Business Council, Trademark Africa, KPMG, Corporate Council on Africa, and KGL Foundation. Each of you have made invaluable contributions and provided tremendous support towards this event. Thank you for making it possible. As we bring the best minds together, I encourage everyone to take the opportunity to meet and network with the representatives of all of the African and UAE institutions and companies gathered here today. Today's event will highlight several crucial issues and opportunities within major sectors, including agriculture, climate finance and investments, logistics, and green transport, as well as clean energy. Each sector will have focused dialogues with industry experts, followed by panel discussions that highlight challenges, opportunities, and provide roadmaps for us to achieve sustainable business practices as well as create wealth. We're delighted to welcome you to this event, especially following the very successful launch a couple of days ago of Sustainable Trade Africa on December 4th at COP28 at the Expo City. For now, please turn your attention to the screen for a short video presentation highlighting Sustainable Trade Africa. May I request that we play back the video?
Africa a continent of untold beauty and boundless potential. But the road to prosperity is fraught with challenges, and it's time to address them head on. Introducing the Sustainable Trade Africa, a visionary initiative that unites stakeholders from all corners of this vibrant continent and beyond. It's a dynamic platform where innovation and collaboration take center stage. A place where groundbreaking solutions are nurtured and green investments attracted. Sustainable Trade Africa isn't just about economic growth. It's about tackling climate change, reducing our carbon footprint, and building a greener and more sustainable future. It's a platform to celebrate Africa's resilience, innovation, and unwavering commitment to a brighter and more sustainable future. Together, we can write a new chapter in Africa's journey towards prosperity and environmental harmony, hand in hand, as we embark on this transformative voyage, where Sustainable Trade Africa is not just a concept, but a surrounding reality. Together, we will forge a path towards economic growth, environmental conservation, and lasting prosperity for Africa and the world. Be a part of a change. Join us on Sustainable Trade Africa. Together, we can make a difference.
Sustainable Trade Africa, not a concept, but a reality. Well, to begin today's program and to provide additional context for our gathering is a leader with an exceptional track record of advancing global trade and investment. He has been pivotal to driving strategic partnerships and promoting economic growth between the UAE and Africa. His rock-solid commitment to innovation and redefining the landscape of international trade is very well established. To provide background as well as new pathways for economic collaboration and prosperity on a global scale, please, ladies and gentlemen, give a very warm Dubai welcome to Mr. Waleed Mohammed Hareb Al Falahi, the CEO, UAE Trade Center and DC Global, as he comes to the dais to deliver his welcome address. Please give him a warm welcome. No, please come on. I really think we need to up the volume a little bit this morning. There we go, that's more like it. Thank you very much.
You look good, brother. Actually, if I would have wrote it, probably I would have not write it as good as you. First of all, it's so funny that I was part of the team that built this place. I'm a guy who went through the Dubai Incorporated vision, and I thank Dubai that had taught me a lot of lessons that, the amazing thing about Dubai, it allows you to dream. And it gives you the tools for you to actually, finish that painting in a proper way. I remember I was at 32 years old, and I was given the chance to develop. I don't know if my chairman, I know he has a representative here, so I have to be very careful what I say, huh, Mahmoud? So basically, during the war in Iraq, I got the chance to go to Iraq in the middle of the war. I don't know if that for me to learn or they finish me there and I don't come back. So we started looking at the opportunity surrounding Dubai, and actually I was earlier talking about this with His Excellency Dr. Ashina. We started looking at that Dubai was attracting a lot of procurement. Surrounding area, they are looking at procurement, etc. So as a result of that, we were able to come up with an idea called Dubai Humanitarian, which is more of a logistics center, as well as a procurement center to feed, to supply to this. And, when you start a vision, you don't know how good it will be. Actually, I was rewarded after 20 years of doing the project. But that's the normal corporate world. Later on, I went into another project which I feel it's one of the most difficult one, which is the establishment of Dragon Mart. I don't know how many of you know what is Dragon Mart. Okay, Dragon Mart is the largest Chinese B2C investment outside China. During my days, it was 10 kilometer by 10 kilometer of shopping. So if you want to lose weight, you want to walk, that's the place where you would never go without losing a kg or two. But then I think, and I finished with Jebel Ali, and I realized that, it's time to go into something new. And that's where I feel that I re-established my life. My life became different when I first started developing a new project, which is a railroad project in Ghana, between Nigeria and Ghana. In every project, there is pluses and minuses, good and bad. I don't think it was the most successful project. But then I met with His Excellency Adesina and our late friend Sani Dangote. We wanted to establish Kenya, Nigeria trade bridge. And it's also a coincidence, thank you very much for you, that we are reconnecting again through this vision. So I started doing things in Africa. And this is not directed to these two important gentlemen, but to the audience. What you hear about Africa is not the reality. I think I consider myself an African. We need a little bit of promotion for Africa, because the actual realities of Africa is absolutely different one. I don't know who's benefiting in painting that color, but trust me, you see, these two gentlemen here, audience, these are guys who are running major projects, and they treat you like a brother. The benefit of Africa for foreign investors, Africa take people seriously. They treat you like, they take you seriously. Also, we have a similar blood. When you go to Africa, you are part of the family. I don't want to say it in a, I was part of the first IPA, which is Jebel Ali Free Zone. We used to travel all over the world. And without mentioning any country, certain part of the world, they don't even meet with us. And we are coming with proposition. You go to Africa, people are welcoming. They welcome you as a brother. Even from head of state, they work with you. And that's what inspired me to work, to go further in the development. And I think that Middle East Africa trade bridge, and Your Excellencies, this need to be drawn and need to be developed in a way where we don't have to have borders between us. You have to imagine no borders in our business and trade. Later, so I started doing, from taking delegation to Africa into small project. Now I'm engaged in an energy project in Ghana. Also, I started a small agriculture project. And all the time, I was hearing, it's very dangerous, it's very difficult, be careful, it's easier for you to stay in Dubai and do business. But every time I hear that, I see the opposite. I see the potential in Africa, I see the possibilities to do more and to do more. So what is it? Is there I don't know who's benefiting from that, but today, what we're trying to aim, and with the presence of well-established people here in the room, we really want to enforce one thing, that Africa is the next place where there is no, believe me, for me, if, and I hope the Dubai government will not boycott me after this, but honestly, if you are really thinking of growing business in a bigger way, I don't see any other places other than Africa. You know, you try to talk about certain countries, even in UAE, we have opportunities. But if I would have said, I will develop 100 megawatt solar in UAE, I doubt, I cannot. I'm being very frank. Systems have been developed where in Africa there is needs and requirements. And with need and requirement, there comes opportunities. But you know, and I'll be very frank, we go to one time to a country in Africa and we expect the business to happen the same day. You know, I go 10 times. Why? Because I know business is there. You have to go. You have to go. You have to go. So I feel that Africa is a serious proposition, is a serious business that can give you good return of investment compared to different areas. Finally, what drove us to this, I went to New York, Your Excellencies, last UNGA. And I met with certain names in the industry. And they felt, Mr. Walid, please, let's do something. And I really thank both of you. I went to Marrakesh, and we had the discussion, and he told me, go ahead. I went to Egypt, and Professor Rama pushed me also to put his team, your team, everybody feel that we need to come up. But, gentlemen, I have one thing. These speeches, plus, minus, forgive me for it. You know, I love that, you know, leaders, their job is to position, to reinforce. When these two gentlemen will come and speak, they are speaking to reinforce that I am the highest person in Afri-Exim Bank, I'm the highest person in Africa Development Bank, coming here and telling you we endorse investment, we support investment. But in the end, Your Excellency, we're developing this for projects, for investment. I promise you one thing, and you can hold it against me, that the next version is about investment. Of course, I need the help of everybody. I'm one individual who's willing to do it. But we need projects for Africa. We need investment for Africa. And I can guarantee you from an experience point of view, I'm glad Africa 50, they just arrived. So, you know, we need people to understand projects. There is projects in Africa. There is good deals. I'll give an example. I started one project. And I can tell you, in 1 year, I returned my money. If I would have done it in Dubai, I will not get that money. So, in the end, I just want to enforce one thing. Africa, I know we are during COP time, but Sustainable Trade Africa means business. We are here for business. Sustainable, I know for some people means renewable, means, I know Ahmed is from Masdar, so yes, we are talking renewable, but I'm talking renewable from a project perspective. We want more projects. And trade what bring people. And Africa is the place where we are focusing and trying to do our business in. Thank you very much for, you know, listening to me. Thank you very much for supporting us. And after this event, we will definitely come up with something much better. We are working now with our partners to come up with something that can be continuous on a yearly basis, on a monthly basis, that engage people into projects, etc. We discuss few things with our partners, and hopefully we can reach an understanding how to develop these things. Thank you very much for your support, and I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walid Al Falahi, for a warm welcome address. And again for expressing your passion for increased trade and business activity between the UAE and Africa and vice versa. And as you rightly pointed out, Africa indeed is the next frontier. If the frontier is not already here, there's no other frontier. And at the end of the day, Africa, above any other environment on the globe today, is bankable. Leadership is about bringing the future to the present. That's what you leaders are gathered here to help bring to pass on our continent. Our next speaker lives, breathes, and talks Africa 24/7. The continent is his passion and his life work. He is one of Africa's most visionary leaders, a world-class technocrat, and a bridge builder par excellence. He continues to push the boundaries of what is possible and to positively shape the African narrative. He is known and fondly described as Africa's optimist in chief. You'll figure out why in just a few moments. But as he makes his way to the podium, please join me in welcoming the President of the African Development Bank, His Excellency, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina.
Thank you very much, Victor. My dear brother, Walid Mohammed Hareb Al-Falahi, the Chief Executive Officer of UAE Trade Center and DC Global. Thank you very much for all that you do in believing in supporting, and in promoting Africa. You said you are African. I stand here to actually say we should give you an AU passport. Thank you so much. My dear brother, Professor Benedict Orama, President of the Africa Export-Import Bank, thank you for co-sponsoring this particular event. Thank you for bringing Africa here. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Sabah Al-Khair. I wish to thank you for inviting me to speak with you briefly this morning at this very important event. Let me start by saying that Africa is bankable, and you figure it out. Just look at the population, 1.4 billion people. That's going to be 2.4 billion people by 2050. You think about where food is going to come from in the world. It's not going to come from Asia and the world. It's not going to come from the United States or Canada. It's not going to come from anywhere else except Africa. Why? Because Africa has 65% of the uncultivated arable land left to feed the world. So what Africa does with agriculture will determine the future of food in the world. Think about electric cars. If you think about electric cars, the size of that market today is $7 trillion. That size of that market is going to go to $57 trillion by 2050. What do you need for that? Everything is in Africa. You need platinum, you need copper, you need cobalt, you need lithium, graphite. All those things Africa has in abundance. And in fact, the Afrexim Bank, ourselves, and the Africa Finance Corporation, we did a joint study to look at the critical metals and what that really means for the world. And what we found was that a 10,000-ton lithium-ion battery precursor plant built in Africa is going to be 3 times cheaper than it is in the United States, 3 times cheaper than in China, and 3 times cheaper than in Poland. And what has always happened is Africa exports raw commodities. Now, when you export raw commodities, it's the door to poverty. You go right through it. But when you actually develop globally competitive value chains with value added, you move to the top of that value chain. It is the highway to wealth. And so we said to ourselves that no. In fact, I'll talk about that in a minute, that we're not going to do what was done in the past, where Africa exports coffee beans and others make the money going to the bank, making money with brewed coffee. Africa accounts for 65% of all the cocoa beans in the world, but just 2% of all the $120 billion a year that's generated in chocolate markets. What's the brain surgery in making chocolates? And so we said, though, we are going to actually support African countries to be able to do lithium-ion precursor batteries in Africa. And Afri-Exim Bank, ourselves, AFC, I think it was Professor Rama, just about a month ago, I think there was a meeting that was held in DRC and Zambia looking at that particular issue. Now, think about another thing that's very, very important for Africa, the young population. And where do you find 477 million people between the age of 15 and 25? That is the workforce of the world. Very well trained, very well talented, with lots of ideas, with lots of creativity. So when you're looking at where the workforce of the world is going to be, it's going to be in Africa. And therefore, you cannot ignore Africa at all. And even more so, and I know that when Kelly was here, I saw him on the program, maybe he was here before, look at the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. That's a market that brings together collective GDP of $3.4 trillion. That's the largest free trade zone in the world in terms of number of participating countries. But when you think about it, when Africa continues to invest in infrastructure and logistics and all of these things, the power to explode in terms of trade, it's unlimited. And so if you're here today and you're thinking, well, if I invest in Africa, well, they tell me it's risky. You know, when I learned to swim as president of the African Development Bank, I'm 63 years old now. So you can imagine when I learned to swim. Everybody used to tell me that swimming was very risky. And so I got this coach who said, actually, President, if you don't know how to swim, that is a key person risk for the African Development Bank. If something happens, all the big general capital increase we gave you is going to go down the water. And so I got a coach, and the coach came and he told me, first 2 days I began to swim, and can you imagine, I'm not so old anyway. I don't think I feel old. And after a while, he said, the third day, he said, I want you to go to the deep end of the pool. I said, you must be crazy. You really want me to be a key person risk. And I moved, he said, just keep going. If you sink, I'll grab you. I'm right behind you. And I continued to move. And I just got to the end. And I realized that where the water is very, very deep, that's the best place to swim, because the water has a buoyancy that carries you. And I was beginning to now enjoy myself. Then I looked behind me to see my coach, just in case something happened. He wasn't there. He was at the other end of the pool, and he was speaking right through the water. Of course, I panicked, and I began to sink. What am I trying to say is, if you actually know what you're doing, where you think is most risky is probably the best places to invest, because you know the place, you have the right parties to work with. When you know your neighborhood, you're not afraid of your neighborhood. So us, as African Development Bank, Afri-Exim Bank, all the other, Africa 50 is here, Alan is here, our job is to be like that coach of mine, to say, go in, invest. The risk-adjusted return is very high. We'll be right behind you. But this time, we will not be on the other side. We will really be there with you right through it. And that's why we created the Africa Investment Forum. Africa Development Bank, Afri-Exim Bank, Africa 50, the Trade Development Bank, the Development Bank of South Africa, which one am I? Islamic Development Bank, European Investment Bank. We all got together to be that we want to accompany investments to go into Africa so that you can make your investments like a plane that is on a smooth landing strip. We want investors to come and be comfortable. And today, the way we hold the investment meetings for the forum is the heads of state are there. They don't give speeches. they go into investment boardrooms where we discuss projects from energy to infrastructure, to transport, to rail, to corridors, to digital infrastructure, to AI, to almost any sector that you can imagine. In the last 4 years, since we started this together, we have mobilized $177 billion of investment commitments to projects all across Africa. Just think about that. And when people say invest in Africa is quite risky, well, is it? Is it? Bloomberg did an analysis, actually it's Moody's Analytics, that did an analysis of infrastructure investments globally, cumulatively over 14 years, and looked at the non-performing loans on those infrastructure investments. What did they find? They found that non-performing loans on infrastructure in the world is lowest in Africa than in Latin America, than in Asia, than in Eastern Europe. Just think about it. So the Africa that I'm talking to you about, it's a different Africa that you need to know, that you need partners to work with you. You need to be able to swim through investments. And I can tell you something. There is today no project of any size that us, our collective financial power, between the African Development Bank, the Afrexim Bank, Africa 15, all the other financial institutions that we have on the continent, on this platform, there is no project we cannot handle, not one. When Mozambique wanted to take advantage of its liquefied natural gas, $24 billion investment, we brought it to the Africa Investment Forum that we do collectively. And when we brought it over there, we structured it over there. It was done. That is going to make Mozambique the third largest exporter of liquefied natural gas, but it was structured in Africa with financial institutions around it. That's what I said, that we're like that coach that's actually going to be there all the time. How many of you know Lagos, Abidjan Highway? It's been there, right? Professor Orama, for forever. And you run Africa's Bank on Trade. And if you don't have that corridor, what do you have? We brought it together to that Africa Investment Forum platform. And we structured it, $15.2 billion. It was done. We're looking for rail corridor to connect DRC all the way to Tanzania to DRC, all the way to Burundi, where you have all the mines. We brought it to the Africa Investment Forum platform. We structured it, $3.6 billion. It's done. We were together just, Alan, when was it? Just about a couple, in Marrakesh. And we raised in Marrakesh $34.84 billion across different projects from various parts of the world in less than 72 hours. So I have faith and confidence that Africa has the investment opportunities. We, as African Development Bank, we deploy all kinds of instruments to make it easier for you to make those investments. People tell me that it's risky. I understand risk, market risk, project risk, political risk, yes. But risk is not the reason why you don't do anything. Risk has to be managed. If I walk right through a car, crossing the street, that's a risk. If I go on a plane, and you say, this is Emirates Airlines, which I love Emirates Airlines. They treat you so well. And when you're on it, you're watching movies, you're drinking wine, you're even having your shower. And that's how good these guys are. But you're flying 35,000 feet above sea level. That's the greatest risk of your life. But they've managed it so well. That's the same thing in business. It's the ability to manage risk. I want to assure you that we have the instruments, partial risk guarantees, partial credit guarantees that will reduce those risks, and working with others, Africa Trade Insurance, we can handle any kind of risk plus guarantee political risk also on the continent. So I just wanted to give you that comfort. Can you please turn to somebody next to you and say, go there? Yeah, I mean, go to Africa, that's what I mean, huh? Huh? Now, I want to address a subject quickly before I go because it has a fundamental implication for Africa as you talk about sustainable trade. And that is Africa's sustainable trade and energy mix. That's the only thing I just want to talk about because it has an implication for our competitiveness globally. Today, Africa's total value of global trade is, the total global trade is $25.23 trillion. We account for 3% of that total trade. Our trade is dominated by primary exports of minerals, of oils, of metals, and gas. And despite our enormous potential, we only have 3%. We represent 3% of global manufacturing. So we are exporting jobs. Now, this makes us very, very vulnerable in face of volatility of commodity prices all the time. Super cycles go. That happens. But because of our weak integration into the global value chains, Africa's best opportunity lies in intra-regional trade. And that intra-regional trade with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is estimated to increase intra-Africa exports by over 81% by 2035. But I want to be clear that this is not the first time we've been trading in Africa. We've been trading way before. So the issue is not really just trade. The issue is turn that zone into an industrial manufacturing zone that allows us to have value chains that will produce, that can be competitive regionally, but also competitive as platforms globally. And that's what we are working towards being able to do as industrial platforms. But something else of a headwind is happening today to Africa, which I want to raise at this very important meeting. And that is what has happened with regard to our largest trading partner, which is Europe, is Africa's largest trading partner, with the EU carbon border tax adjustment mechanism. Now, this carbon tax will cover all goods that are from third countries, all of which are not under the EU emissions trading system, the ETS system. Now, this, ladies and gentlemen, will, in my view, significantly constrain the exports of value-added products such as cement, iron, steel, aluminum, and fertilizers coming out of Africa. Why? Africa has an energy deficit, and we rely on fossil fuels as we should, because that's where we are. Most of the energy is done by diesel for companies. But that has implication because now, if you cannot get those products into Europe because of the border tax on carbon, what that means is you're forced to have to export primary commodities because you scoop and sell. You don't process, because if you process, then somebody looks at what's the carbon in that, and that's an unfair thing because Africa has only 3% of global energy. We have natural gas in abundance, and that natural gas is exactly what we need to give us stable grids to industrialize. No, I was talking to Professor Orama and I and Walid, we were talking about the old issue of industrialization. No country in the world can industrialize on variable energy. You need stable, secure energy sources, energy mixes to be able to do that. And in the case of Africa, take the case of African Development Bank. We invest today, 87% of all of our investments in energy goes to renewable energy. We invested and make happen the world's largest concentrated solar power plant in Morocco. In Kenya, you were there, you're there. We did the Lake Turkana project. We're working with Africa 50 now to do the first transmission line that would do that PPP. In Egypt, we have the Bembam project all over. However, realism, not ideology, drives industrial development for sustainable growth. And so Africa needs to use those natural gas to give itself the energy mix. But when it does that now, because of this border tax, that's going to make Africa suddenly run into a big problem. And we could lose $25 billion a year because of this direct result of this EU carbon border tax adjustment mechanism. And yet Africa gets only 2% of the $3 trillion of global investments in renewable energy over the past 2 decades. This underinvestment globally, therefore, in supporting Africa to unlock the full potentials of its renewable energy sources will now impact negatively on its ability to industrialize, on its ability to export competitively to Europe and who knows, perhaps other places. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here at COP, and I want to be very clear. This system does not take into consideration the principle of common but differentiated responsibility that developed countries will pick and have net zero in the first half of the century, and developing countries will pick and reach net zero in the second half of the 21st century. And so we cannot be penalized for what is already inside of the Paris Agreement just because we are trying to grow our economy with gas, and so that people don't get me wrong. I'm not ideological, I'm practical. And facts matter than ideology. Developed countries used up 4,000 gigatons of CO2 carbon in the world. We are left with allowable emissions of 400 gigatons. Okay? Now, we need to have some space to grow and to industrialize with use of natural gas. I think this is very, very important that Africa is not marginalized by this. And so I do want to say that we should not be shortchanged by, we've already shortchanged by climate change. We should not be shortchanged now by energy index global trading partners. I believe, therefore, that in addition to focusing on just energy transition, we should now focus, given this development, on what I call just trade for energy transition. In other words, it's not just energy transition. It's just trade for energy transition. Because if I cannot have access to just trade, I can make the money that Africa needs to be able to have the just transition. We have to start having that conversation now, because we can't take the situation that's happening today. I want to close by saying that we're already investing massively in renewable energy. Today, the African Development Bank is investing with our partners $20 billion to build 10,000 megawatts of solar all across the Sahelian countries, 11 countries, that will provide electricity for 250 million people. When completed, it will be the largest solar zone in the world. With Africa 50, Africa Union, we launched last year at COP, and we actioned it here, what's called the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, which is going to mobilize $10 billion for greening the infrastructure in Africa. So we get it, but we want others to get it too. We don't want to die greenly poor. We want to be rich while being green. So let's support Africa's industrialization. Let's support the Africa Continental Free Trade Zone and take advantage of it. Let's support Africa's integration into a fair and just global trading system that does not penalize us based on energy indexing. Let's support pragmatic, fair, and just renewable energy transition. In this era of climate change, which has already shortchanged Africa, Africa should not be shortchanged by trade-restricting carbon border taxes that will hurt the continent. Let's therefore support just trade for energy transition. People call the other one JETP, right? I call this JTET, just trade for energy transition. It's time for an informed dialogue on energy and sustainable trade. And Africa's particularity should definitely define that dialogue. Thank you very much, and I wish you very good meetings.
Dr. Adishna, I'm going to ask that you stay on the platform, please. Could you, Dr. Adishna, could you kindly stay on the platform? Thank you, Excellency, for your passionate remarks and for making the business case for Africa and managing risk at scale and at altitude. At this time, I'm going to ask that Mr. Walid Al-Falahi and Professor Benedict Oke Urama and Engineer Mahmoud Al-Bastaki join Dr. Adishna on the platform for a brief presentation. And certainly what we see on the platform here are two great, innovative, visionary leaders who are moving the needle on African trade. Ladies and gentlemen, please give Dr. Adishna, as well as those on the platform, a warm round of applause. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Dr. Adishna will be followed by the very esteemed CEO of the Afri-Exim Bank, someone who this year alone has won so many distinguished awards for his innovation and the creativity that he has brought to the financial landscape of Africa. With his wealth of experience in trade and finance, Professor Benedict Urama is a visionary leader who continues to boldly drive economic growth across the continent. His innovative strategies and deep understanding of global markets are revolutionizing African trade and finance. Please welcome to the podium His Excellency, Professor Benedict Oke Urama, President and Chairman of the Board, African Export-Import Bank, Afri-Exim Bank. And again, Professor, congratulations on your many awards this year alone. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to be here and to be a co-organizer of this very important conference. Let me thank Walid for his partnership and for being an Africa indeed. His speech and that of President Adeshina have made my work this morning much easier. I don't need to say too much because they've sold Africa and they've set the stage for the discussions, I guess, that will follow. Allow me to just add a few words, perhaps just for emphasis. Sustainable trade does not necessarily mean green trade. I think President Adeshina alluded to that. Sustainable trade will mean being able to trade in such a way that the average person benefits from it, that we achieve economic development from it. And for Africa, this is particularly important because you cannot talk about greening or decarbonizing in a continent that has not even carbonized. So if we begin to talk about decarbonizing, we divert attention from the real issues. And the real issue is dealing with poverty on the continent. And the source of that poverty is the structure of our trade. For decades, Africa has been exporting and continues to export commodities and then import finished goods. You don't need a rocket scientist to tell you that this is unsustainable. It is no wonder why Africa is a continent that is the hardest hit whenever economic shocks happen, because the trade we conduct is inherently unbalanced. We only are living because of the dynamic nature of the payments and receipts that happen when trade continues to flow. You do not understand that we are in a situation of kiting, what we call kiting in banking, because we are always in perpetual deficit. It is only when shock occurs that deficit materializes in the form of a backlog in trade debt payments that have to be made, whereas we do not have receipts that will come. And that is why in 2018, the continent did something that one would consider a decisive move to begin to change this. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement was signed. And a year after, quickly came into force, having received the requisite ratifications. So the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, the AfCFTA, represents the platform on which we can begin to change this, because we cannot leave it to others to do for us. For decades, we've shouted, we've cried, we've prayed, nothing happened. And that was because we kept relying on others. And others kept making promises to us like the promises that some people call that say that it looks like beautiful cake in the sky. You will see it, but you never touch it. But this time we've taken our destiny in our hands. It's still early days, but it promises to redefine what the continent will look like in the coming years. Through the AfCFTA, we are going to build the regional supply chains that will begin to dynamize our economy and help us to gain dynamic comparative advantage that will make it possible for us to be competitive eventually in the global markets, to move our share of the trade from what President Adesina mentioned, 3% of global trade, to something like the 5-6% that we used to enjoy in the 1970s. And as we do this, we begin to trade amongst ourselves. We begin to implement the agreement in a more aggressive manner. We also create opportunity for our partners to do business. Trading within Africa requires a whole lot of infrastructure. It requires the roads, it requires the railways, it requires ports, it requires industrial infrastructure, and also the services that sustain trade, including banking and insurance services. because Africa is capital scarce. It creates an opportunity for the capital surplus economies to benefit, to come and join us. But they do this in a way that is now win-win and not exploitative. Because by now coming to invest, you help us to build a foundation for us to trade more amongst ourselves. You build a foundation for us to use trade as an engine for development. You build a foundation for us to also now begin to contribute to greening the world. Trade is the third largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions after the US and China. The way Africa trades creates quite some carbon emissions. When we export commodities, raw commodities, to Asia, Europe, America, and they are processed there and shipped back to us and the other parts of the world using old technologies to manufacture them, we are increasing greenhouse emissions by that act. But when we begin to produce within the continent, when we build regional supply chains, we will immediately eliminate the greenhouse emissions that come from the unnecessary shipping. And because we are going to start industrialize, we are just starting to industrialize, we are going to be using more modern technologies, energy efficient technologies that will also reduce the carbon emissions per ton of good produced. So by coming to invest, you would benefit from the bigger market, benefit from the returns that will come from it. And if you love the environment, you also contribute to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And if you love the people, you also contribute in reducing poverty. And for Africans who will be part of this, we begin to restore the dignity of the African. We will no longer be seen as people that just go around with cap in hand begging. We will no longer be seen as a continent of potential. Since I was born, I went to school, they told me Africa is full of potential. And I kept asking, when will that potential be realized? So, and this is the time to realize it. And as you come in to do this, President Adesina mentioned African institutions are there to support you. And we have quite a lot of them, all bettered by African Development Bank. We have ourselves, Afreximbank. We have Africa 50 that's here. We have Africa Finance Corporation. We have Trade Development Bank. You have Africa Trade Insurance Agency. You have all the sub-regional development institutions. Each and every one of them has programs and facilities designed to mitigate risks and to support you to do business in Africa. It's no longer the case that the source of capital in Africa must come from outside Africa. No, that narrative has changed. And that is consequential because we are now able to do things as banks that help our people to do business, helps others who come in to manage the risk and also to fund their operations. And to support the African Continental Free Trade Agreement implementation, Afreximbank has designed quite a range of products and services. We know that as a continent that has 42 currencies, 42 payment systems, cannot really trade amongst itself in a meaningful manner. And that is why Afreximbank has worked together with the African Union Commission and the AfCFTA Secretariat to launch the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. The Pan-African Payment and Settlement System integrates all the 42 payment systems into one rail that makes it cheaper, faster, and more convenient to make payments within Africa. And it brings additional benefit. It makes it possible for you to pay for goods and services using your national currencies. So we've domesticated intra-African payments. Makes it possible for a farmer in Upper Egypt to buy goods from, say, Cote d'Ivoire by just using his or her phone and paying for those goods in Egyptian pound. The Ivorian seller gets the CFA franc. We have also developed and installed the Africa Collaborative Transit Guarantee Scheme. Prior to this, because the continent of Africa has 110 borders, before you move goods from one border to the other across borders, you must post a transit bond. That is inefficient for a continent that wants to open as one market. So what we have done with the Transit Guarantee Scheme is to work with the African Union and the Director General of Customs of Africa to have a regional transit scheme. So Afreximbank is a regional transit guarantor today, and we are implementing, in the meantime, in the COMESA region, and helping the other sub-regions to develop the system and the technology so that we can integrate them. So that if you were to move goods from Cape to Cairo, you will not need to stop because of transit issues. And Afreximbank is also, has expanded significantly its lending in the intra-African direction. Prior to 10, 15 years ago, it was difficult to find financing for intra-African trade. But today, it's becoming more and more fashionable. In fact, intra-African trade financing accounts for 30% of Afreximbank's portfolio. And that includes providing letters of credit and other trade services, intra-African investment financing facilities, guarantees, and other services. We also have in place a project preparation facility. So if you wanted to come and do business in Africa and you wanted to do the studies to make sure that it becomes bankable, Afreximbank is there to support you. And because we know that today infrastructure remains a constraint, we have worked with others to put in place financing schemes and investment arrangements for building industrial parks. And in fact, working with the African Development Bank and other institutions, we have also launched a partnership for special agro-processing zones. These zones are developed with the necessary infrastructure that makes it possible for people to come and invest in them. But on top of that, Afreximbank then has facilities for those who want to locate in those factories. These are some of the services that we have to make it easy for you to come and invest, to make it easy for you to support intra-regional trade on the continent and the AFCFTA implementation, to make it easy for you to then point to Africa and say, by investing here, by helping to promote regional integration, I will also be contributing to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I will contribute in making trade sustainable globally, because I will reduce greenhouse emissions, I will create wealth, I will make the average African richer. When Africa is good, when Africa is doing well, it will be good for the world. We invite you to join us. Thank you very much for your attention.
Professor Orama, I'm going to ask that you also stay on the platform, please. Kindly stay on the platform. Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Professor Benedict Okey Orama, congratulations on account of his exemplary and visionary leadership was recently named Forbes Africa 2023 Person of the Year. Please give him a warm round of applause. Very, very well deserved. Thank you for highlighting the fact that the narrative on Africa's infrastructure financing has changed through the collaborative work that both yourself, Africa 50 and the African Development Bank continue to do, as well as highlighting Africa's tremendous potential. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please give Professor Benedict Oke-Urama a warm and well-deserved round of applause. Now, we're also very delighted to have with us here today a spoken word artist who is literally taking the world by storm. Mariam Bukar Hassan, otherwise known as Alhan Islam, is a storytelling consultant, a social entrepreneur, a digital content creator, and a Pan-Africanist, all wrapped into one. Please welcome her as she comes on stage to share the magic of her powerful words. I know lunch is just around the corner, but I'd like for us to give this young lady, this talented, gifted artist, an even better round of applause. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Permit me to observe the already established protocols. As a young African person who constantly asks the question, how can I contribute to the development of my continent? It led me to asking and having this conversation with an old man where I said, I am not good enough. The cold has settled in. There is no warmth in my continent. He gazed at me and remarked, I am a citizen of every country. Every country, yes, every country, birthed by a mother so divine. She is a mother with no borders, Mama Africa. She has 54 children, and in each are warriors. And though some are gone, their names are leftovers, like that food in the morning that fills you up, yet reminds you of the lingers of the night, manifestations of victory. Names on walls that time fears. When it runs out, they still remain. They ignited Africa. They were lions, and you, my darling, are a cub. He said, dear great-granddaughter of a mother so flaming, a continent with indelible resources, but of it all, you are its greatest asset. Your scheme, propositions, an idea, if you dare, will resuscitate the cold spirit of grace and glory for the Black continent. You will create a prosperous African community whose sustainable development will be you-driven. Yes, you, because you are Africa's biggest capital, greatest asset. You see, the color of your skin doesn't mean the color of your brain. It is but a great lining to conserve the light that you possess. Your passion is excellence unrefined. It's gold unmined. It's diamond unexploded. Dismay not and bring it raw. That is the only way to your inner unshrunken lion heart. Dear blazing, glistening, lustrous, dazzling child of Africa, you are a tune from your grandfather's flute. You are the sweat from your mother's labor. You are a representation of love, a pledge of loyalty that sprung of tongues and body languages. You are a sacred covenant, forever binding ties of two familiar strangers, lands, borders, and boundaries. You are the supernatural phenomenon they spoke of beating their chest, and you are the cub of a lion, and bravery is in your bloodline. So if you ever feel like you your ideas are not good enough. Remember, all you have to do is roar. When the cold settles in on your mother, our mother, Mama Africa, remember, within you is enough fire to ignite Africa. Thank you so much.
No, we're not going to let you off so easily. Please take your place at the podium, and we are going to ask Mr. Walid Afalahi, or actually somebody else is making the presentation. Very much appreciated. You have a powerful voice, a prodigious talent, and we wish you all the very best. Thank you for representing Africa, and there's Mr. Walid also to congratulate you. Congratulations and well done. What a powerful and amazing segue to our keynote address. Thank you very much once again, Al Islam, for those very, very powerful words, inspiring also. It is with great pleasure that I now introduce and welcome to the podium our keynote speaker, Her Excellency, Princess Adejoke Orelokwe Adefulire, the former Deputy Governor of Lagos State and the Senior Special Advisor to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria on SDGs. Please welcome to the podium, Her Excellency, Princess Adejoke Adefulire.
Very good morning to everyone. I'm sure we're still in the morning. Very distinguished investor guest, my brother, the president of Afrexim Bank, the CEO of UAE Trade Center, Dr. Walid, their investors, very distinguished leaders in this room, and friends of the Chief Executive Officer of the Trade Center. Let me join my brother Walid to welcome all of you and to thank you for coming to this very important meeting that deals with our future. Recall that in 2015, the world leaders met at the United Nations General Assembly in New York to adopt the Sustainable Development Goals, which comes with 17 Sustainable Development Goals, 169 targets, and 230 key performance indicators. The intention of the world leaders then was to build a very world that is resilient, a world that is peaceful, a world that will make all of us, irrespective of our gender, irrespective of our status, irrespective of where we live, to make it sustainable and non-discriminating. This ambitious goal specifically means development. And when we talk about development, we talk about people, we talk about peace, we talk about progress, which is prosperity, we talk about partnership, we talk about planet. The 5 P's talks about investment. Investment in the world. A lot of opportunities and possibilities. I must tell you this afternoon, after listening to the two speakers, the President of African Development Bank and the President of Exim Bank, you will agree with me that with all the opportunities and possibilities, Africa holds the key. In all sectors of economy, Africa holds the key. And in doing that, the world knew that Africa is the focus going forward. And there's need for all of us to join hands, work together. From now, action starts now, and we cannot afford to wait. We cannot afford to waste time any longer. Africa holds the key in all the sectors of economy. So, trading, investment in Africa cannot be overemphasized. We've listened to the African Development Bank president, who gave us the statistics of what makes it possible, what makes it important that Africa has what it takes for investment all over the world to come down to Africa. We can talk about different things: no electricity, insecurity. Let me tell you that electricity itself is an investment. Insecurity itself is an investment. So everything is investment. Name all the sectors in the economy, they are investment, and people can key into. Africa is the future of the world. And I must encourage our investors to please look at Africa, look deep into Africa, the prospect of Africa, the opportunities that lies in Africa, and the possibilities. Of course, yes, we have 54 countries in Africa. Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa, the leader of the Africa. And a lot of things is going on there. Some very smart economists, capitalists are already there. I know in Nigeria we have a lot of Chinese, a lot of Americans going into agriculture in a large scale, going to renewable energy in a large scale. Everything is going on. Mining and all of that is going on. Likewise, other countries. We better quickly make up our mind to look at those countries that you think will give you high return on your investment so that we quickly go there. The opportunity of coming together, for all leaders to come together in UAE this year for COP28 is to look at possibility and opportunity that lies. And I know how many meetings we have held since the COP28 started, and on many discussions, many memorandum of understanding that we have signed in investment and trade. Please look inward, do more research, and you get the information that you need. If you say there's no electricity, bring electricity as an investment, and you get return on your investment. There's insecurity in Africa, yes, you can invest in security activation, and you will see high return on your investment. Everything and anything is investment, and Africa is ready. All what we need, and we have been doing amongst ourselves, is to ensure that goal 16 of the SDG, which is peace, justice, and strong institution, is enabled. And that means that guarantees your investment. That is work in progress, and we'll continue to do that, because without guaranteeing your investment, you will not want to come, and we're working on that. Goal 16, goal 17 of the SDG protects your investment and make you come closer to the government of each of the countries to work with them. The private sector is the one that will bring the funding that require to fund the SDG, working with the public sector. The two together will make the world a better place for all of us. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Princess Adefulere. If you could kindly stay on the platform, I'm going to invite Mr. Walid Al-Falahi and Mr. Mohsin to come to the platform and make a brief presentation. And we'll transition immediately into a very short fireside chat. It's going to be fast and rapid. Coming up next with the CEO of Africa 50, Mr. Alain Ebobisse. Ladies and gentlemen, can you give Princess Adefulere a round of applause? Thank you very much for your intervention and submission. At this point, I would like to invite to the platform, as we transition to our fireside chat, our moderator for the fireside, Dr. Ashraf Mahati, Chief Economist, Trade and Export Market Development, Dubai Department of Economy and Tourism, to introduce his guest. Actually, to both introduce his guest and get on with the fireside. Mr. Mahati.
Thank you.
Mr. Mahati.
Thank you.
Mr. Ebobisse is running tight on time, so we're going to make this rapid fire, straight to the point. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I have so many questions here to ask Mr. Ebobisse. Because the amount of work that you're doing and the activities of Africa 50 are so amazing. I think we could have done half a morning on just you, right?
Thank you.
So we'll try to minimize some of these questions.
Yes, thank you.
And I think it'll be very important for the audience and for me as well, because infrastructure is really the base of creating trade.
Yes.
Infrastructure is the key enabler for trade, and an entity such as yours, the Africa 50, is a pan-African investment platform focused on infrastructure. Tell us about the work that you do and how it contributes to delivering sustainable trade and investment in Africa.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Ashraf. And I would like to thank my brother Walid for inviting me to speak at this very important event with many important distinguished speakers and distinguished participants. Africa 50, we are still relatively new. We are an infrastructure investment platform owned by 31 African countries. Of course, the African Development Bank is also one of our owners, and then 2 African central banks. But those shareholders have given us the mandate to operate commercially. And so what we do, we invest in infrastructure and we catalyze private investment in infrastructure in Africa. And indeed, infrastructure is such an important enabler for trade, and especially regional trade. So what we do at Africa 50, we focus on early stage project development and project preparation to try to build a pipeline of bankable projects that would be available for investors to come in and invest. Because indeed, we see a lot of money that is sitting on the sideline, but we need to make sure that we have bankable projects so that investors can come in and invest. What we also do at Africa 50, we mobilize funds from within Africa and outside Africa to co-invest, to invest in profitable infrastructure in Africa. And then we have a track record. Although we are relatively new institutions, we have demonstrated through our portfolio, to our pipeline and our portfolio, that African infrastructure is bankable, is profitable. That's why Dr. Adesina, who's the president of African Development Bank, also my chairman, he's the chairman of the board. That's what he said. And then we have the data to demonstrate that African infrastructure is profitable and bankable. And so this is, in a nutshell, what we do at Africa 50.
That's absolutely amazing. It really is amazing, because I think when you have an African bank investing in Africa, that creates a synergy.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
that what you have found?
Well, absolutely. I think that's what we want to do. And it's actually an important point. Thank you for prompting me to emphasize that point. We are now in Africa at a stage of our development, also on a mindset, whereby we are saying Africans have to show the way.
Yes.
We are investing in Africa. We are demonstrating confidence in African assets. But of course, we are seeking partnership with global partners, including here in the UAE, to make sure that together we can develop at scale with speed. We have the way, we know how to do this. Right. We've done these things. Now it's about scaling up, and I would add speeding up. It's important, speed is important. I need to talk about regional infrastructure, which is such important.
That was going to be my next question.
Okay. All right, please go ahead.
No, please.
Well, I love to talk about regional infrastructure because it's important. We're talking trade. Today, a lot of sectors in Africa are structured to trade with countries outside of Africa.
Right.
And yet we need to trade a lot more within Africa. That's why the African Continental Free Trade Area is such an important African initiative. First, to make sure that we give a bigger market to investors within Africa and outside Africa that are looking at investing, but also to facilitate regional trade. Indeed, what we believe, we have a lot to trade among each other. In power, we have a lot of energy sources, solar, huge potential. We will build solar power plant and build transmission lines across countries so that we can trade between the countries solar. For example, telecom. Telecom, you know, today we have a lot of cables, high speed cables landing on the shores of Africa. But connecting African countries with one another, not too many are doing that. Africa 50, together with our partners, by Baobab, we are working on connecting 10 countries with high-speed broadband networks, fiber, to make sure that we trade with one another, we facilitate the trade. This is the mindset today of Africans. We are co-investing with global partners. So the global partners, you can come to Africa, you will not be alone. You will be co-investing with us. We'll take the risk. If you make money, we make money. If you lose money, we lose money. That's the real incentive where we are fully aligned in terms of interest. So that is also Africa 50 that we do.
Going back to regional trade, because I've been to Africa many, many times. In fact, I was born in Africa, right? So for me, what is really important is how to take something from Kenya and export it to the Gambia.
Yes.
Right? Because really what you need, power is very important, but you need logistics.
Yes. Well, look, that's fantastic. I think logistics is important. And honestly, today, we don't have enough efficient logistics to make sure that we facilitate the trade among African countries. But we are working on that. I was just talking to my neighbor who was sitting next to me about logistics. We are at Africa 50, we invest in logistics. And we are interested.
Is it roads, trains?
Well, all of the above. We invested in roads. In fact, we are looking at roads in a couple of countries, in Togo, but also bridges. And then we are developing the Two-Congo Bridge, which will connect Kinshasa and Brazzaville. It's about creating those links to make sure that we can trade seamlessly, goods and people. But here's another point. You know, today in Africa, and it's not only in Africa, in many countries, you have big backlogs at the borders.
Yes.
The borders, we are trying to make sure that we build joint one-stop border posts across many African countries to facilitate those borders. And in fact, what we have seen in some of the projects that we've done, you move from a few days to a few hours in terms of the time that trucks will wait at the borders. I can tell you that when those trucks, they have to only spend an hour when they used to spend 2 days, they are so happy, and that increased substantially the trade between those countries.
But when can we get to a stage where we spend zero time at the border?
Well,
because hopefully the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is supposed to bring this across, right?
I think we hope that we will get there. In fact, that would be something important. But you will still need to have at least the physical infrastructure so that you can collect the data. But the trucks, the people will not have to stop, but those data will be collected through various ICT tools so that the countries can make various analysis. But indeed, the goal would be to have no waiting times at the border.
That's ideal, yes.
That's the
ideal,
goal.
ideal
That's
situation. But going forward, so you're talking about building roads, building trains in Africa, and connecting the African countries, and also doing power. But what about creating employment opportunities, creating opportunities for youth? How does Africa 50 get involved in that?
Well, look, I think we are specialized in infrastructure.
Right.
We believe infrastructure is a key driver to economic growth. And we are supporting, of course, inclusive growth. And, in some of our projects, of course, it is high employment, but we also have to create the infrastructure that will enable the private sector to come in and create additional services, additional activities that will generate employment. So as far as we are concerned, the infrastructure needs are so big, so that's what we are focusing on. And then the other companies will come in and develop industrial parks, various activities to generate jobs. And that's important for us. We need to solve this infrastructure deficit in Africa, and that is a big enough an issue that we're doing.
I read somewhere it's about $2 trillion, which is a huge potential and a huge requirement for funds, right?
Yes, it's a huge potential requirement, but what is the good news is that now there is a consensus at the political level, across all the levels, that the private sector has a big role to play. People used to feel that the government will solve this problem. Nobody is thinking that way anymore. It's finished. It's a private sector, so we are developing the enabling environment to make sure that the private sector will come in and make impact and make money. Money. They can make money in Africa and make impact, and this is what we're all about.
I realize you have to leave, but I have one last question for you.
Yes.
Are you a long-term investor, or is it after 10, 15 years you will actually exit these investments through an IPO or a sale and then reinvest your money into new projects?
Now he's talking strategy with me now. I can say publicly, it depends on the investments. Right. I want to be aligned with my co-investors. So if co-investors want to stay in for some time, we can think about staying in together. If co-investors want to exit to an IPO and recycle the capital in Africa, we are game, we go for it, because the impact that we can have also in recycling the capital is quite good. So we do what makes sense for the project and for investors.
So a very flexible approach.
We are very flexible, but we have to make money and impact.
Well, if you don't make money, you don't get new investors.
Absolutely, it's important. The both money and impact. Thank you.
So that makes sense. So it's a win-win situation for Africa, for the investors, and for the ordinary people there.
Absolutely.
Right?
Thank you.
That's a wonderful situation.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much. And I don't know when I'll be able to ask you all the other 20 questions I have.
I will come back.
Thank you so much.
Ashraf, thank you very much. Sounds very much like speed dating in a business conference.
So good.
Really fast engagement. Thank you to the both of you, Ashraf and to Mr. Ebobisse, for an excellent fireside chat. I'm going to call on Mr. Walid Al-Falahi and Mr. Muhsin Al-Awadi, CEO Dubai South, to make a brief presentation. Please join us, Mr. Al-Awadi, on the platform. The CEO of Africa 50, Mr. Len Ebobisse. Congratulations, and thank you very much for joining us on this fireside chat. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Yes, no, it really was, and I think there's some more work we can do together.
In the interest of time, I'm going to ask right now that His Excellency, Mr. Ibrahim Matola, Malawi's Minister of Energy, share a few insights with us from his country's experience, particularly with regards to promoting sustainable business practices in his country. Over to you, Excellency Ibrahim Matola. Please give him a warm round of applause as he comes to the platform.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Your Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from the Republic of Malawi. It is an honor to address you today on the vital subject of sustainable trade in Africa, As we gather at this critical moment, we are confronted by the urgent need to forge a path toward economic progress while safeguarding the future of our planet, which is facing a man-made environment crisis. Africa stands at the crossroads of opportunity and responsibility. Our continent is rich in resources, innovation, and potential. Yet, our journey towards sustainable development demands a paradigm shift, a transition from conventional trade models to ones that prioritize sustainability, equity, and resilience. Today, I stand here to underscore Malawi's unwavering commitment to spearheading sustainable trade practices across Africa. We recognize that sustainable trade is not merely an option, but an imperative. It is a catalyst for inclusive growth, poverty reduction, and environmental preservation. Malawi firmly believes in harnessing the power of renewable energy as a cornerstone of sustainable trade. We are dedicated to investing in clean energy infrastructure, leveraging our natural resources responsibly, and advancing policies that support renewable energy adaptation. Furthermore, we advocate for fair and transparent trade partnerships that empower local communities, promote gender equality, and respect indigenous rights. Collaboration and cooperation among African nations are pivotal in creating a unified front for sustainable trade practices that benefit all and across the globe. I'll give you, and let me quote the African proverb, which says, "One hand cannot clap." In Arabic, they say, "Al-yadu wahidu la tusaffiq." We need collaboration among the states so that we can achieve the intended goals, and the goals also which we are setting ourselves under the charters. Moreover, our commitment extends beyond national boundaries. We are eager to collaborate with international partners, leveraging knowledge sharing, technology transfer, and investment opportunities to accelerate Africa's transition to sustainable trade. As we navigate the challenges posed by climate change, we must prioritize resilience and adaptation. It is imperative that our trade practices are resilient to impacts of changing climate, ensuring continuity and stability for our economies and societies. In conclusion, let us seize this moment as a catalyst for transformative change. Let us work hand in hand, fostering innovation, embracing sustainability, and paving the way for a future where trade uplifts communities, preserves our environment, and propels Africa towards a prosperous and sustainable tomorrow. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We're not going to allow you to leave our platform so quickly. I'm going to ask at this point that Mr. Walid Al-Falahi and Princess Adefulere come to the platform, join the Honorable Minister on the platform for a brief presentation. Honorable Minister, thank you again for emphasizing the point. As they come, yes, if we could have Mr. Al-Falahi and okay, Mr. Yofi Grant and Princess Adefulere, if you could join the Honorable Minister on the platform. But even as the Honorable Minister closes, I want to again highlight what he said earlier. In Africa, we say you cannot clap with one hand. And indeed, to grow the Africa of our dreams, we need a collaboration of global players in the private sector and investors also. Honorable Minister, thank you very much for your kind thoughts and for joining us today. The team is waiting for you. Please give the Honorable Minister a warm round of applause. Thank you very much. Moving along, allow me to, shortly we're going to introduce our first panel during this session on the green transport and logistics sector, unlocking Africa's export potential, facilitating market access for manufactured goods and promoting service exports. But before we get into the discussion, I'd like to invite our presenter, Amadou Diallo, the Chief Executive Officer, actually not Mr. Diallo. Mr. Diallo is going to be represented. He is the Chief Executive Officer of DHL Global Forwarding Middle East, but he will be represented by Mr. Tobias Meyer, who will be sharing a few thoughts with us on the green transport and logistics sector. So, Mr. Tobias Meyer, the platform is yours. Please give him a warm welcome as he comes to the podium.
Assalamu alaikum, Excellencies, distinguished guests, brothers and sisters. Yeah, my name is Tobias Meyer. I'm working with my brother Amadou since 8 years in this region. I've lived some time in Africa. And I'm very happy to share some thoughts about transport in Africa because I think it's a very special time. And I came here this morning, didn't know what to expect, and I have to say I'm very happy and very optimistic after listening especially to the speech of Excellency Dr. Adesina. I think he summarized a lot of very important points in a very concise way. There is so much opportunity in Africa, and we keep talking about the opportunity for years and years, but there's two things, I believe, which can be catalysts to really drive and accelerate the growth of wealth across Africa. Number one is the Africa Free Trade Agreement, and I think we heard a lot by the previous speakers about how long it takes to move cargo within Africa. And unfortunately, the reality is that trade within Africa is complicated, timely, and very costly. And we need to find ways to enable a much easier, a faster, and a much more cost-efficient way to trade. It will require investment into infrastructure. It will require investment into assets, into trucks, into vessels, into planes. But, and it's perhaps a call for all the political and governments people in the room, customs procedures can be simplified very rapidly and can make a huge difference. It takes us typically weeks to get cargo out of ports, not days. It takes us 20 minutes in Abu Dhabi to get the container out of the port. It takes us at least days, if not weeks, in many of the African ports. If that goes faster, it will reduce cost for everyone. It will make goods much more affordable. And let's face it, it is a key criteria for big corporates to make decisions about investments into production facilities. There is a big other trend happening today. In DHL, we call it China plus two. I don't know whether you heard about it, but a lot of the big corporate companies are at the moment reconsidering the places where they want to produce. The key locations they look at are places like India, Indonesia, Vietnam. But frankly, there is not many places in this world where you will find such a young workforce than across Africa. And why are those corporates not looking with the same focus at the opportunity in Africa as they do in other places? Because it is so difficult to get your product out of the country to your end consumers, which are still sitting in Europe, US, many Asian countries. So trade and logistics is always there to support manufacturing companies, to drive and pave the way towards wealth. If you look at World Data Bank, you have the Logistics Performance Index. The best African country is South Africa, placed 22. I think UAE is in the top 10. If you look at our own DHL Global Connectness Index, again, the best country is South Africa, around the 20s. Typically, the second country of Africa you'll find in the 40s, 50s. If you look at the places from 100 onwards, a lot of African countries. This has to change to really unlock the potential of Africa. And I really hope, and I came to this region 8 years ago. A lot of my colleagues looked at me, why on earth did you come to Johannesburg? Why do you believe in Africa? And I said, it is the future. It is the place where, I think Dr. Adesina said it, 1.4 billion people live today, 500 million are below the age of 25. It will be 2.4 billion. It is the place to be, but we need to find ways to unlock the potential. We need to be less protective. We need to believe in the power of trade. Intra-African trade, based on the latest statistics I know, is accounting for 14% of the trade. African countries, they trade with their European partners or with China. I come from Germany. I come from actually, theoretically, a poor part of Germany in the south, Stuttgart. It's known for Porsche and Mercedes-Benz today, but there was nothing. It's just built based on engineering and brainpower because all the wealth was in the north where the traders were and in the west where all the coal was, where the energy was. But they made it work because of trade, because everybody used the skills, the capabilities of the different clusters across the country. And we need to find ways to replicate the same across Africa. Today, Germany's biggest trading partner is China. But for Germany, it's more than 50% of trade happens within the European Union. More than 50%. In Africa, it's 14%. Because it is too complicated, too costly, and it's hindering the development, the creation of wealth of the biggest continent on the planet. So, let me close with an African proverb I really like a lot, and I keep using very often. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So let's find ways to collaborate. Looking forward to hear and calling you for action to help us simplify the supply chains, because that will be the enabler for Africa in the long run. Thank you very much. Shukran.
Thank you very much, Tobias Meyer, for those comments. It looks like the African proverbs are coming in fast and furious today. I'm going to see who's going to come up with the next one. So again, that's the challenge before every single one of us. I'm going to ask Mr. Walid El-Falahi to make the presentation on behalf of Mr. Amadou Diallo, the Chief Executive Officer, DHL Global Forwarding, Middle East. And that will be received by the speaker, Mr. Tobias Meyer. Please give him a warm round of applause. And thank you for joining us, Ms. Farida. Very much appreciated. Well, we're going to move on to our next session, actually, our first panel. Again, this one will be moderated by Dr. Ashraf Mahate. Please welcome him back to the podium once again. Our session right now really does feel like speed dating on steroids, business 2.0. So we're going to try and make this as fast as possible in the interest of time. Many of you already have COP28 commitments, and we want to be mindful of that. So please welcome, as they come to the podium, Ms. Alan Asimiwe, Deputy CEO, Trademark Africa. Please give her a round of applause. And she will be followed by Mr. Antonio Henrique da Silva, founder and CEO, Invest A Limited. To be followed by Mr. Bavin Vias, Chief ECG Officer, Arise IIP and Arise IS. Doing great things in the agricultural sector, by the way. And Engineer Mahmoud Al-Bastaki, Chief Operating Officer, Digital Trade Solutions, DP World. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our distinguished panel. Please give them a warm round of applause. Ashraf, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, that's wonderful. And we'll, please, that was a wonderful introduction to the panel, and I think you're right. We are going to have a lot of speed dating and speed panel sessions because we have got so much to talk about, so little time, and I think it's, where do we start? And I think you're the closest to me, Bhavin, so we'll start with you. It'll be important if you can highlight to us the importance of incorporating two important things: sustainability and environmental conservation in the expansion of transport and logistics. Because what we saw in the first fireside chat, logistics is important. So how can we bring this?
Thank you. I think historically, sustainability and economic development has been seen differently.
Sorry, can we have the mic working, please? Oh, you need to press. Okay.
Hi. Can you hear me now?
Now we're good.
Okay. So I think this is a right time where we don't see sustainability and economic benefits separately. As we say that the three integrated pillar, which is people, planet, and profit. And if you balance that together, I think there is an advantage. Africa has a one unique advantage currently. They can avoid making the mistake that has been made in the past by other country when they have industrialization. And I genuinely believe that today's blueprint is tomorrow's footprint. So the way we handled whole industrialization and logistic value chain in Arise by not keeping it separate, but embedded that into a business plan. So when you think about SEZ, you put ICD within that. When you think about built environment, you make all your building LEED and H certified. When you talk about transportation, you think about the blended fuel and LPG. So if you keep it separate, it's never going to provide you a solution. If you keep it embedded as an integral part of business solution, you will have a business model which is integrated business model which is representative of solution of climate problem.
I love the way that you put those three things: people, planet, profits. Because I think that's really the theme that we're coming to see, that focusing purely on social aspect without profit does not make it sustainable. Right? We need to have a balance. And Antonio, that leads me very nicely to you. Another private sector initiative. How can African nations balance economic development objectives with sustainability in the expansion of transport? Because I love what he said about the 3 Ps. I'd like to see your perspective on this. Sorry, we need to switch it on.
Well, yes, thank you. I think it's a very pertinent question, since the challenges around finding a balancing in terms of economic development and the transport infrastructure sits on prioritizing green infrastructure, where by saying so, we are looking at eco-friendly modes of transport like electrical vehicles, hybrid ones, and also combining those aims with the infrastructure materials that are environment friendly. On the other hand, we also have to align those with the kind of legal frameworks that enable us to implement legal space, in the legal space conditions to enforce the implementation of regulations and also to monitor that same implementation so that no one is behind the law and no one manages to not respect that.
I think that's very, very important. But the one thing that I think immediately hits me back is that there's a cost difference, right? Because when you're looking at sustainability, it's going to be more expensive than non-sustainable solutions. And I think that brings me to you, Alan, right? What do you feel are the Africa's comparative advantage that offer opportunities in green trade? Because really economic development that Antonio talked about, the 3 Ps that Bhavin talked about, all come down to trade. Trade creates prosperity, creates growth, improves life opportunities.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. So I want to start by debunking the myth that sustainability is more costly. Yes, it could be costly, but we are looking at how we can actually integrate it into our already business structures. We've had the whole morning and throughout COP how Africa has a lot of advantages or comparative advantages in terms of renewable energy, in terms of our solar gas, everything that can make our industrialization grow. We have not yet had clearly how we are going to extract it. We have not yet had clearly how we are going to develop this. One of the key battles right now is on batteries. It's the new frontier for Africa, and Africa does have the capacity to develop batteries and power its industrialization. But let me talk to you about the sustainability cost and greening production. For a long time, we have worked on reducing emissions because we've seen trade volumes grow along transport corridors. If you just look at East Africa, within the Northern Corridor, in 2010 when we started work, we only were bringing 27 million metric tons a year. Now we're at 34 million metric tons, projected to grow to 44 million metric tons within the next decade. That is all, I think 80 and 90% of that is moving on road. So you can imagine with old vehicles, old technologies, the level of emissions that are happening. But we are not only about reducing emissions, because we know Africa's percentage contribution is low, though it's growing at an alarming rate because of all those factors, delays and all. What we are now looking at is supporting our regions to adapt to the new realities. Take an example. This year, in March, one of the leading supermarkets in Europe announced a ban on any air-freighted produce into Europe. What does that mean for a country like Kenya, which relies almost 100% on exports of produce and tea? We are very quickly having to see how we can help them adapt to sea freight. And so we've initiated a project that is looking at how do you move Kenya's produce from air freight to Europe, which is its leading market, to sea freight, and that requires refrigeration. It requires a whole logistics upgrade in terms of the railway carriages, because that produce must move at a certain temperature. So it can be done. I think our Rollers trademark, we are testing it, but we need to test it at scale. We need to test it in a way that can show Africa that it can be done to actually move to green trade. Thank you.
That's very, very interesting. And I think one of the important things is how do we now move to modern trade, right? And modern trade is underpinned by e-commerce. We have seen the COVID period. We've seen how e-commerce grew 8-fold in a matter of few months. So, Engineer Mahmood, DP World, the most famous company in global logistics, has moved into e-commerce business with the launch of Dubai.com. How is this business related to Africa, and how can it help African exporters?
Thank you, Doctor. For many of you who know DP World, traditionally, they look at us as ocean freight. We are port and terminal operators. Lately, we are becoming a trade enabler. So we are in the business of enabling trade from the entire ecosystem of trade, as our chairman describes it very well, from the factory floor to the customer's door, and whatever comes in between, in terms of logistics, maritime, road, air, ocean freight, anything in between, we want to be part of it. E-commerce is a natural evolution of our business. We look at our traders are our main customers because trade is run by the traders, and we want to talk to the traders directly. So this is becoming a shift in our main focus of the customers. We call them BCOs, beneficiary cargo owners. Usually they are the traders, the exporters, the importers, or the consolidators of cargoes. So e-commerce, we addressed this by launching a B2B platform called Dubai. Dubai is D-U-B-U-Y. And it's like a connotation of coming to Dubai and buying. So do, D-U, and buy. Dubai. Come to Dubai and Dubai. So we launched this Dubai as a B2B platform, and our first focus is Africa. So what this has to do with Africa, we want to ease the movement out of Africa and into Africa. And when we talk about e-commerce, we're talking about the search, the price, the categories, availability, the logistics, the payment, the support. The entire value chain, we have put that in a platform called Dubai.com. We help the importers in Africa to import their commodities, their main essentials at a competitive price with ease of logistics and payment. Also, for the African countries to do a trading within Africa and outside Africa. DP World, you are present in 6 continents. Please use us, use our reach and our network. We are a trustworthy company. We built on trust, and we would like you to grow your trades. And this is meant for us to be helping you in the logistics, in the e-commerce, in all essence of cargo movement. So Dubai.com is for you, and we will be expanding in all African countries as we go. Thank you.
Wonderful. And Engineer Mahmood, you're already in Kenya, I believe, and East Africa. You're already in you're in Kenya, East Africa.
We did a pilot in Kenya and Rwanda and Burundi and in the eastern part. But our mission is to be global, and this will be expanded into all other African countries, including Nigeria, Ghana, and
Perfect. We look forward to that. So again, it's Dubai.com. Praveen, if I may come back to you again. See, one of the problems we find is that the challenges in infrastructure investment. It's long-term, difficult to define. You have too many stakeholders. There are a lot of challenges. So how do you overcome the challenges? And what are some of the examples of eco-friendly infrastructure projects that you have implemented that we can learn from?
Thank you. I think the challenge is that having an absence of ecosystem. So when you think about entire industrialization process, logistics, trade process, one has to have a complete ecosystem. Some of the ecosystem fits into responsibility of state, public. Some of the ecosystem that one private sector can build, and they're completely dependent on each other. So structuring this kind of ecosystem-based approach can become very difficult. So what we have done that we encourage public-private partnership, a model where you partner with the state, you go for a long-term date with DFI and an African bank like Afri-Exim and African Finance Corporation. And then you structure the project which provide a complete solution from road to storage, to processing hub, to again logistics, and then port. And if you create an ecosystem which solves entire value chain problem, I think you can address one of the biggest issue. Now the challenges which we feel is that some of the components are less revenue generating and some components are high revenue generating. And then the way project finance setup is the same. So I think the more public sector investment, especially in infrastructure at state level, can reduce some of the cost and the burden on the infrastructure. What we have done is we have broken down certain projects in a manner that helps us to structure our financing in a way which is competitive. Secondly, what we have done that we have utilized a green in our advantage to reduce the cost of borrowing. So what we have done is, as I said, all our physical asset is green based on the LEED and H certification. All our commodity that we transform will be certified by the highest standards like FSC or rainforest. So you have a reduction there also. And then you build all your processing hub, raw material access and transport, which is low carbon, circular and green. And by doing that, I think you can get an access to a lot of concessional debt, you can technical assistance program, and then you can create few separate projects which reduced overall burden on the borrowing as well as infrastructure pressure.
If I may just do a follow-up question, because I like the idea of how do you reduce the cost of debt? Because this is the problem that we face. When I look at African debt, I find that debt in Africa is more expensive than in Europe. And you said you work towards reducing the cost of debt?
No, so the debt is expensive, but
Yes.
eventually by going green,
Okay.
there are a lot of incentive to transition to the green bond, green
right,
sustainability
okay.
linked bonds.
That makes sense. Antonio, I mean, Bhavin mentioned the 3 Ps, the different 3 Ps than the last ones, public-private partnership. And from your perspective, how can they contribute to overcoming structural challenges in transport and logistics sector?
Well, they can contribute in many ways. First of one will be through funding, and by doing so, we are able to reduce the exposure of governments to when dealing with huge infrastructure projects. On the other side, we also have with efficiency. We know that the private sector brings in efficient methods of doing business, which again represent a value add in that chain. Through innovation, we also know that the private sector is capable, much easier to introduce innovative and technically advanced ways of implementing projects. One other aspect that's also important is risk-taking. By mitigating risk, by sharing risk, we're also able to process projects in such a ways where the exposure of governments to risk is also reduced. And overall, I believe that through that collaboration, PPPs are much appropriate ways of project implementation, especially the ones that are infrastructure related.
I mean, from your perspective, Antonio, because I like the idea of PPPs. I think PPPs are the way to go forward because especially the amount of money that's required for infrastructure funding, I don't think any government has got that kind of money, right? So you need private. But what segments of government do you bring in? Because government doesn't really think in an entrepreneurial way, right? Generally speaking, right? Entrepreneurs want to think in an entrepreneurial way. So what are the segments that you would bring government in? And what are the segments you bring non-government or civic society in? And partnership and private sector?
Well, I believe that when it comes to infrastructure projects, mainly into the infrastructure space, it's important to rely on investments from the private sector. But we should also look at governments as on a path of evolution because governments have been also changing a lot. And the fact that we now have also AI and is also assisting in those challenges, in reducing bureaucracy and finding ways to automatize processes.
That's actually interesting, and I never thought about AI as well. So that also brings a new perspective. Moving over to you, Alan, what are some of the ongoing initiatives to green trade, particularly with respect to greening transport and logistics?
Thank you so much. And I think Victor challenged us to who can get more proverbs, and I have 2 that I thought of very quickly. The first, if you want to eat a frog, eat a juicy one. And Africa is a very juicy frog. The risks are high, but the rewards are going to be much higher. The second, if you're to eat an elephant, take it piece by piece, because it's huge. When you look at Africa as huge and impenetrable, you're not going to be able to access it. But let me give an example of something we are working on with DP World. Yesterday, I was meeting with the Vice President at DP World, and together we have partnered in a number of ways. For instance, in the Horn of Africa, which has Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Somaliland, the DP World has invested millions of dollars, which would never be able to invest as Trademark Africa. I think over $300 million to $500 million in building a new port, in putting in place a special economic zone, and actually also working on an airport. What we are good at doing is we are working with the government of Somaliland and Ethiopia around a transit agreement to let the goods move from Somaliland to Ethiopia. We're also working on systems, connecting systems. You heard DHL World talk about the delays it takes to clear produce. We are looking at tracking that produce along the corridors. And we've seen it done, because in East Africa, we worked with governments over the last 10 years to bring down the time and cost of doing business. In many cases at the port of Mombasa, it took you over 12 days to get your produce offloaded. Now it takes less than 3 days to move out of the port, because of the reforms we have taken. And so we've discussed again, as you take up Dar es Salaam port, how we can partner along the central corridor from Dar es Salaam to, say, Bujumbura, on increasing efficiencies on that corridor. Single customs territory, looking at single declarations, looking at digital and AI in terms of blockchain technology that reduces the risk and increases transparency of trade documents. We are launching some new products that way. So there are a number of initiatives we are taking, not just to reduce, say, the emissions along the corridors, but to increase the opportunities for trade. Because we have noted that where trade is more efficient, you actually get to get more people trading. They are encouraged to bring in more goods. They are encouraged to trade out. I think our call now is, we are seeing, of course, an increased cry for industrialization and manufacturing. Every government I speak to, every leader I speak to, they have the imperative for jobs, young population. So there's a drive to industrialize like we've done before in other parts of the world. But I think our call has been, how do we industrialize in a green way? And so we are looking at testing technologies around green manufacturing, green production, for instance, in the cotton, textiles, and garment industries, in the horticulture sector, with grain, and all the agro-processing that has to go with those sectors. These are the conversations we're having with governments, because, as you know, they have this huge juicy frog that they want to eat.
I like the idea about creating opportunities for trade, and that brings me to you, Engineer Mahmood. The World Logistics Passport, the first loyalty program for freight forwarders and traders to facilitate trade across borders. How will this help exporters in Africa?
Yeah, we launched World Logistics Passport in Davos in the year 2020, and it was launched by His Highness Sheikh Ahmed bin Saeed Al Maktoum. The message is, we want to remove trade barriers. And our focus is the southern part of the hemisphere, which we are talking about Latin America, Africa, Dubai, and Southeast Asia. So imagine a trader in Africa, he's an exporter, he wants to export to Malaysia. And they don't want to export because for several reasons, that is basics of impediments of trade. I don't know anybody, I don't speak their language, I don't trust anybody. So if you fix these problems, if I tell you, I know someone who can buy your products, I know someone who you can trust when it comes to payment, and we'll help you in logistics. So that's the whole idea of Double World Logistics Passport, is a network of exporter and importer put together, where the importer and exporter get benefits from the hub they operate from. So if one of our hubs in Africa is Kenya or South Africa, shipment leaves South Africa or Kenya, all the entities in South Africa give benefits to that trader. Benefits are time and cost. Less clearance time and more cost effective. And if the recipients in Dubai, the recipient gets all the benefits from the Dubai entities. So it's a win-win. We want people to trade more and extend their reach, extend their network. WLP, it's a loyalty program for people, for traders and freight forwarders who are members, who get benefits from the partners. Partners are the customs, the port, the airport of every hub we operate in. It's been working. We've seen new trade routes and new commodities being exported for the first time, what they never dare to ship. That's the whole beauty. I fix all your issues of trust, reach, currency, logistics. Let's do business. That's the whole message of WLP.
Another ecosystem.
Yes.
Another ecosystem. I have so many questions to ask, but unfortunately I've been told that I have to conclude this conversation. So I'd like to thank my wonderful panelists, Pravin, Antonio, Alan, and Engineer Mahmood. Thank you so much. I think we have a group photo.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Alan Asimwe. You certainly threw down the gauntlets. Not only did you give us one proverb that was business and trade relevant, you threw down two. So I'm expecting that others who are following are going to beat the record. But in my books, you are in the lead so far. Thank you very much, Mr. Asimwe, Mr. Antonio Henriquez, Mr. Bavin Vias, Engineer Mahmoud Al-Bastaki, and excellent moderation by Ashraf Mahati.
Just 1 second, you're going to get a
Thank you very much.
memento. Just 1 second.
And one more photo shot here. And as we're finalizing
Sorry, let's come in.
this session, wasn't that really inspiring
Let's look at
and
the cameras.
insightful? I think it was. And because I do, and I hope you do also, let's give our panelists, great panelists, a warm round of applause one more time.
Thank you.
So at this point, we're going to transition into our next
Sorry, I couldn't ask more questions.
panel
Yeah, but
on clean energy,
meeting, yeah,
strategic
yeah.
sustainable power projects,
No, you're gonna get
and a just
at the
transition.
stage.
So allow me now to invite the moderator for our next panel discussion, Mr. Ekenem Isiche. All right, we're still not done with the business on the platform. Un momento, por favor.
We're witnessing. No. That one's later. No, Badin. It's okay, Badin. Lala. Oh.
Excellent work, Ashraf. Excellent work. Well done. Can I give our panelists one more round of applause as we welcome our next panel on the stage? And I'm going to do that by introducing and welcoming our moderator for the next panel, Mr. Kanem Isiche, Director, Corporate Counsel on Africa, as he comes on stage to introduce his distinguished guests. Again, in the interest of time, we've cut off a few minutes from your panel discussion, but we're going to make it fast, furious, but extremely productive. Over to you, Kanem.
And you, yes. And you. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Okay, in the interest of time, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
So I'd like to call up the panelists really quickly. If you could please welcome the Director of Project and Asset-Based Finance from the Afri-Exim Bank, Ms. Helen Rume. If you can give her one round of applause, please. I'd like to call up the Deputy CEO from Infinity Power, Mr. Ahmed Mullah. I'd like to call up the Regional Director and Representative from the UNEP, Ms. Rose Nwebaza. And I'd like to call up the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of Majid Energy, Mr. Adib Rahman. Please give them a warm round of applause as they're coming up to the stage. Thank you. So we're going to keep ours really short, and I'm just going to ask them just one question each, and then they'll give their closing remarks afterwards. So we're here to talk about the just transition and sustainability. Everyone in the room can attest to the fact that the inflation numbers, cost of production has gone up by, in some cases, by at least 30%, which makes the cost of doing business more expensive. And we have people in the room here who are financing projects across different sectors, whether it has to do with health or infrastructure, and they're all thinking about what are we going to do moving forward. I work for an organization that focuses on US-Africa trade and investments and scaling that, and has done that for 30 years. And so we have a lot of lessons across the continent and even directly with the US. So my first question is going to Mrs. Helen Brume. Great. So how is Afri-Exim Bank ensuring that all these investments it's making now and in the future align with Africa's long-term goals and objectives, considering all the challenges you're seeing on the continent? Over to you.
Thank you. I would like to start by essentially recapping what the concept of a just transition means for Afri-Exim Bank. So we at Afri-Exim Bank believe that gas will play a key role in the just transition ambitions. We work with our member countries, our sovereigns, in helping them achieve their industrialization targets, while at the same time working to deliver on their NDCs as agreed during the Paris Agreement. And we do that from two perspectives, from a financing perspective and from a facilitation and intervention perspective. From a financing perspective, we finance transactions across the entire value chain of clean energy, sustainability transactions, and that cuts across multiple sectors: power, energy, transportation, and renewables. That being said, there are several instruments that we have put in place as a bank to support the continent's decarbonization efforts. And I'll spend a few minutes talking about a couple of them. We have recognized that it takes on average 7 years for a project to move from the concept stage to a stage where they can actually approach banks for financing. And that's because of the absence of the requisite funding required to develop the project. So our response to that was to set up a project preparatory department. And the project preparatory department provides the seed funding. It's a loan, it's not a grant. And the idea is that the funds are repaid when financial close is reached. And in doing that, we've been able to build a pipeline of over $2 billion worth of transactions that can now confidently approach financial institutions for funding to develop projects. Secondly, we approved a $500 million concessional finance window. Concessional finance is a tool which can be used to leverage and catalyze additional funding. For every $1 of concessional financing, you're able to attract 5 times worth in senior debt. So we believe that that would be a strong catalytic tool in helping the private sector and also our member countries achieve their aspirations with respect to a just energy transition and decarbonization. We've also introduced what we call our EPC contractor initiative, because we recognize that a lot of value leaves the continent when it comes to executing some of these power projects. And if we're really serious about our ambitions to increase our employment rates, to develop our skill sets, and to allow us effectively bid for some of these jobs on the continent, the local EPC contractors need to be encouraged and they need to be supported. So we do it from two perspectives. We facilitate some of our local EPC contractors that we've identified to get some of these jobs on the continent. And we take it a step further by also providing them with the financial instruments that they need to actively bid for those jobs. And we've been able to facilitate over $6 billion worth of contracts on the continent. I will just end with one last intervention that we've developed. One of the key missing components in the whole value chain of funding is equity funding. I mean, If you think about an average cost of a project, $300 million, your typical debt to equity ratio is 70-30%. 30% of $300 million is almost $100 million. That's a lot of money. And it's not just your typical equity that you require patient equity, equity that sends a strong signal to other investors, equity that sends a signal to the debt financiers that this project is ready to approach the market. So in our response to that, we set up a subsidiary called Funds for Export Development 2 years ago, and they specialize in supporting transactions and sponsors with equity. They can do up to $50 million. And again, I need to stress that a lot of this is patient equity, which is what the continent needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Yeah, you can clap, please. Thank you. So we're moving on to innovation. The world is changing. The dynamics of the world is shifting. And so you're a company doing work in Africa. And so can you tell the audience about, who are thinking about, what level of innovation is happening within this space, especially around sustainability, even when it comes to things like power projects or major infrastructural projects? And what innovative approaches have you been carrying out to ensure that there's the demand for local employment, even economic opportunities growth is being considered in your approach? So speak from what's happening on the ground.
Thank you very much for having me today. My name's Ahmed Mullah. I'm the Deputy CEO of Infinity Power. So I'd just like to give a quick introduction on who we are and what we do. So Infinity Power is a company that has been formed by the Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company Masdar and Infinity Group. It is dedicated to the African continent. We're currently proud to boast that we are the largest pure-play developer and operator in the continent, with over 1,300 megawatts of renewable energy projects installed and operating. That's in solar and wind. We have a very ambitious pipeline of 13.8 gigawatts across the continent, and we're looking to deliver that by 2030. So our vision is to deliver 10 gigawatts by 2030. And this is done through a combination of skill set, expertise, local know-how, which is definitely a key component, and the backing of our strong shareholders. So how do we overcome the issues and the challenges that we have? Renewable energy, we know, is intermittent. Earlier in the day, we heard one of the keynote speakers talking about the requirement for a stable, secure supply. And that secure supply is required for us to unlock and unleash the economic potential that we have in Africa. In terms of technological innovation, we look for bankable solutions. That's solar, PV, wind, that we know is definitely going to attract the right level of financing that can provide us with the lowest levelized cost of electricity. But that still will not take us to the next level of security of supply. So we need to couple that with storage solutions. There's several solutions out there in the market, which of course includes battery, molten salt, and this allows us to combine the renewable energy projects with the storage solutions to provide a stable supply of electricity. Then there's the environmental issues and challenges, and through utilization of monitoring technology. For example, when we talk about wind, you have the bird impact. We are currently operating in Egypt. One of our wind farms has monitoring where if we are detecting any migratory birds, we will stop the turbines during that period when the birds are in the wind farm area and operate. So we are trying to be harmonious with the environment, using modern technology in order for us to provide a positive impact, not just through green, sustainable, affordable electricity, but also ensuring that we do not detrimentally impact on the wildlife and the environment. So there's also habitat management schemes that we run. We ensure that the local fauna is accommodated and attracted away from the areas where the projects are operating. Finally, there are, and going from the local job creation challenge, how do we ensure that innovation is married into that? We're investing in skilling up the local communities. So one of the examples that comes to mind is our wind farm in Senegal. In Senegal, we've invested in 2 IT centers that graduates over 1,500 students every year, ensuring that their skills are aligned with the local market, with the demands of our modern era, where digital technology is coming to the forefront with artificial intelligence. The new cohorts coming into the market are given opportunities to intern with us to ensure that our next generation of employees at Infinity Power are from the African continent. So our contribution is to ensure that the skills, the expertise, there's knowledge transfer, skills transfer to Africa, and bringing those skills and expertise within the company. So I think that a collaborative approach, an approach where we ensure that it's a win-win situation for the communities that host us as a company and ourselves, working together to deliver our common goal. And I'd like to close by emphasizing that Africa has the largest potential for renewable energy, for affordable electricity. It has the largest potential agriculturally, mining. We are blessed with resources, whether it's under the ground or over the ground. It is only logical that we use sustainable energy producing technology to harness our economic potential. And this is where Infinity Power is coming to serve, to be the preferred solution provider to the continent. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Thank you. Now, moving on to Ms. Rose. He's talked about the community. And in the long-term play of sustainability, if you don't involve the community, there will be a problem. And at the same time, how do you get the communities to begin to think more around the environment? Because there's a cost element to it, right? And there are consequences if you don't think about the environment in general. So what strategies or policies would you recommend that organizations and companies should be thinking about as they implement these projects to put in place so that the community feels like they're a key stakeholder moving forward?
Thank you. This question is very important because the role I play in the UN environment is to convene the African ministers of environment on issues such as this, but also the African group of negotiators that I facilitate through this process. And as you would imagine, this category of people are leaders in our countries. Their number one preoccupation is people and the communities they represent. So the whole conversation about renewable energy and a just transition must be anchored in people. Is it creating jobs? Is it skilling them? Is it limiting contamination of the resources that the communities depend on, whether it's water, or is it enabling use of efficient technologies so that we are using not just sustainable energy, but efficiently and also affordably? So the issues we deal with, therefore, is in working with the member states as their conveners, to work with the private sector and companies such as yourselves to ensure, one, are these companies creating jobs, the kinds of stories we are hearing? Are they skilling people and preparing them for the next generation of technological innovation, including AI? Is it bringing the latest technologies that are limiting emission of greenhouse gases? Because I think the president of the African Development Bank put this clearly when he said, for Africa, really, our share of the global commons was already taken over by the emissions from the G20. So we are not really responsible for a large part of the emissions. The key for us is to develop sustainably so that we do not replicate deleterious development trajectories. So it's about pursuing a sustainable development pathway that puts the African people at the center. With 600 million people without access to energy, that is what is just. How do we give them access to energy? How do we create jobs doing it? How do we protect the nature and ecosystems that allows us to continue to be the bread basket of the world? So those are really the issues we work around. And because we are conveners and provide guidance to member states in how they work with the private sector on creating what we call enabling environments, these are the areas we focus on. So tomorrow during the rest day at the COP, the African Ministers of Environment and negotiators will be convened by UNEP to take stock. What is going? What else can we do better as member state, but also working with business and industry? So that would be my response.
Fantastic. So I have my very last panelist, and I just want you to just highlight really quickly, people in this room that are thinking about partnerships. What kind of partnerships should I be looking at as I want to attain this sustainability path? So what sort of partnerships are you seeing both on the multilateral level, bilateral level, that people in this room should be exploring from your point of view?
Thanks. Thanks. Africa has great potential, as we all know, so I'm not going to talk a lot about it.
Oh.
Africa
let's try the other mic. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi. Oh, this is better. Africa has a lot of potential, and we all agree on this, so I'm not going to really drag on this. Africa has some challenges also, and two things that we think that should be looked at. One of them is the population. It has a 1.4 billion people, so a lot of mouths to feed. And also access to electricity, which is below 45%, which is very challenging. In order to have a good economy boost, you need to have energy, you need to have electricity, and that's another thing. One thing I want to talk about here is there is sometimes people that they think there is a problem with using the land for renewable energy projects, especially solar, because it takes a lot of space, a lot of land, and whether we should keep this land to cultivate the land and grow some produce that we can feed people with, or we should use it for renewable energy. And that's why developing these renewable energy projects require a lot of stakeholders really be involved. This is the point that I wanted to, there are new concepts like using agro-solar, for example, whereby the land can be used still for cultivation, but at the same time we can use it also to produce electricity through PV solar projects. Also, there are other collaborations that can be done even with the existing conventional power generation, because most of, and from my experience in the African continent for the last 15 years in the energy sector, there are a lot of conventional power plants that they're using diesel and HFO also, and they have very low efficiency. So even replacing those with new units that they are higher, with higher efficiency and with, that would reduce the CO2 emission, that could be also considered a sustainable also approach to that. So a lot of stakeholders, a lot of entities that can be, that have to work together really in order to achieve this goal of sustainability and reducing the CO2, and at the same time also making electricity available to the African people. Right now, it's less than 43% of African people basically have access to electricity, which is really a very alarming point.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. And so that brings us to the end of this panel. Um, I'd like to thank all our panelists for their fantastic insights. Please feel free to reach out to UNEP if you want to know more about what's happening on the environmental side, Afreximbank on the financing side. On the innovation side, please meet Mr. Mullah there. And then obviously, if you want to hear about the partnerships, our very last speaker talked what he called it specifically about partnerships. And obviously, if you want to know more about the Corporate Council of Africa, please meet with me. Our US Africa Summit is coming up in May of next year. Yeah, May of next year. And that will be our 15th US Africa Summit. So thank you to all my great panelists. Thank you for inviting us to Sustainable Trade Africa, Mr. Wahid and his excellent team. Thank you. And also Mr. Victor, too. Thank you for being here. I'm a big fan. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ekenem Isiche. Excellent moderation. If our team could just stay on the platform. Helen Brume, Ahmed Mullah, Rose Mwebaza, and Adib Rame. Thank you very much. Again, moving very quickly, a lot of thought, inspiring messages, and again, highlighting tremendous opportunities on the continent. I'm going to invite to make a presentation on the platform Mrs. Emily Mburu Ndoria of the African Continental Free Trade Area and Emma A. from Afreximbank. If both of you would come join the panelists on the platform, it'll be much appreciated. Is Emma A. also in the room? If not, then Emily will do the honors. One thing I'll say is that Emily has a 1,000,000-watt smile. Complemented also by, again, the distinguished panelists on the platform. Ladies and gentlemen, please give our excellent moderator and panelists a warm round of applause. Thank you so much for your contributions, interventions, and thoughts. Now, what we're going to do, and I'm going to exert my privilege as moderator of this event, we are actually, in the interest of time, converging two of our panels, and it's going to be a very, very uplifting, inspiring session. So be patient. Before then, we're going to take two very short, 5-minute each speeches from two of our guest speakers. We're going to start, first of all, with Dr. Fad Al-Guthmi, Program Director, Conservation Finance at the Miamba Year 2 Sustainable Reef Investments Program, Wildlife Conservation Society Program. And he's going to be sharing his thoughts about conservation finance in the blue economy. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, kindly give Dr. Fad Al-Guthmi a round of applause as he comes to the podium.
Super concise, I promise. Dignitaries, fellow delegates, good afternoon. I'd like to thank the organizers for having me. My name is Fad Al-Guthmi. I work with the Wildlife Conservation Society, an international NGO that is headquartered in New York and that is over 100 years old. Our work is to save wildlife and wild places. Myself, I run a marine-based program in the Western Indian Ocean region that is led by a UN coalition and funded by various sources of funding, including public finance, philanthropies, and private sector impact investors as well. My role, very briefly, is to introduce a new color to the room in addition to green, and that is the blue color. Blue is related to our oceans, which are very important to us because they sustain life on Earth. From our social interactions, our cultural and economic benefits, and the most diverse coastal and biodiverse ecosystems. Undoubtedly, it is important to each one of us and it interconnects us both on the ocean and on land. However, despite the growing momentum to build a sustainable blue economy, the SDG 14, which is life underwater, remains one of the most underfunded and overlooked, with an estimated $174.5 billion required to achieve SDG 14. Now, this comes as no surprise to most of us because we relate more with our lands than we do on our vast oceans, which remain largely unexplored. So one of the ways to create a sustainable blue economy is to build on the financial muscle behind the private sector. What I mean by this is establishing the right financial mechanisms that can crowd in private capital to bridge the blue economy funding gap. And one initiative that is being driven by this is the UN-led coalition called the Global Fund for Coral Reefs, which happens to be the world's largest investment vehicle dedicated to SDG 14. And as the name suggests, the GFCR is designed to scale financial solutions and blue economy growth that bolsters the climate resilience of coral reefs and also the coastal communities who tend to be overlooked when we design projects and invest in these ecosystems. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I work with WCS to implement this program in the Western Indian Ocean, specifically Kenya, Tanzania, and the Zanzibari archipelago. And I'd like to call and urge on all of you to consider investing in the blue economy in this region and utilize and leverage some of our pipeline deals that we have lined up, in addition to what has been offered by the UN and some of our private impact investors. Some of the different sectors that we work with include ecotourism, sustainable aquaculture and mariculture, sustainable agriculture, waste treatment and recycling facilities, and also blue carbon, which is still in its nascency. And so as we move to discuss the green economy, I urge that we also take cognizance of the blue economy and support our oceans. With that said, I wish the next panel fruitful discussions, and thank you very much.
Dr. Fahd Al-Guthmi, if you could stay on the platform. You did promise to zip through, and you did. I appreciate you keeping to time. Thank you so much. I'm going to call on my colleague, Ekanem Isiche of the Corporate Council on Africa, to make a presentation to you. Ladies and gentlemen, please give Dr. Al-Guthmi a round of applause. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I just want to use this opportunity to thank you for your patience and for sitting through what really has been a long program. It's going to be wrapping up shortly, and what we've done, in the interest of time, because we started a little bit late, is to converge and merge two of our panels together. The subject matters are actually related: investment as well as agriculture. So there's a nexus that brings both of them together. Once we're done, there will be opportunities for you to network together and also enjoy a sumptuous lunch that has been put together. But before we do, I just want you to stand up just for 10 seconds. Just stand where you are. Stand where you are, that's okay. And if there's somebody next to you, just join hands with that person. And with one voice, I just want you to say on the count of 3, we can do it. 1, 2, 3. Oh, no, come on, that's not convincing. 1, 2, 3. Now that's more like it. Please be seated. On that note, I'd like to invite to the podium 2 of our moderators for this session, which is Emerge. Oh, actually, yes, I'm jumping the gun. These things happen. I'm jumping the gun. We're going to have 2 keynote speeches very, very quickly. The next one, actually we've already had one, we're going to move on to the second. Kindly forgive me, a function of the head, not of the heart. I didn't mean to leave our next speaker out. So I'm going to come to Mr. Saleh Luta, the chairman, UAE Food and Beverages, the manufacturing group of UAE Food and Beverages, to share his insights about implementation of sustainable practices in agribusiness. And for those of you who do not know, the UAE really has some cutting edge technologies and business practices in the area of food. So I'm really looking forward to this. With that being said, please give Mr. Saleh Luta a round of applause as he comes to the podium. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I'm really delighted and honored to be with you today. Before I start my background of what we are doing in the food and beverage group, let me tell you about the importance of this gathering and this city specifically. Last week, I was coming back from Brazil, because we buy most of our poultry from there. So when we were coming back, I had the chance to find our ambassador. Flight was full, and I wasn't knowing that each of these countries coming with their president and delegations together for the COP28. That gives me how really blessed we are with this ecosystem we have in the UAE, and specifically Dubai. And being in the food industry and understanding the importance of this sector, especially in the GCC, because you know most of our food is coming and imported from all over the world. It's a very important sector for us. So what we are trying to do in the food and beverage group is really to energize, grow this ecosystem, and make it effective for today's requirement and our future requirement. And having Africa close to us in terms of geography, I think we have a great opportunity to create this bridge between the GCC as an overall area and Africa. Why I'm saying the whole GCC? Because I feel we are sitting in the UAE within the GCC. It's a great transformation phase we're going through in terms of leadership, in terms of potential, and in terms of growth. If you look globally and you see what's happening in the GCC itself, you will see a great transformation happening, starting from Saudi, Qatar, UAE, and to have a gate for the whole GCC, I do believe that Dubai is the gate. Why I am saying that? Because Dubai being able to demonstrate having more than 200 nationalities with their differences in terms of taste, in terms of requirement, in terms of ethnic, and being able to mold all these nationalities in one city. So the idea of how can we create this bridge between Africa in terms of opportunities, in terms of raw material, in terms of manufacturing, and create a hub, leveraging Dubai potential. So what we do, we try to create this ecosystems. So now we represent all the GCC. We start growing and including IFBA Association. I don't know if some of you know what IFBA Association. IFBA is International Food Processing Association, which comes under 57 Islamic countries, and creating this kind of ecosystem where we can enhance knowledge, raise the bar when it comes for manufacturing, standards, productions, and utilizing the ecosystem we have here in Dubai. We have Gulf Food, which is the main exhibitions take place in the whole regions. Last year, more than 6,500 companies participated. So what do we need more? This is the right hub to have an ecosystem where we can create the bridge of all the resources, raw material, potential we have in Africa, leveraging what Dubai have achieved through all these years and create a mechanism. And this is what I do believe in. We have not really engaged ourselves in Africa to the level where I will be satisfied with. And this is what we are doing starting from 2024. We want to understand all the potential and make sure all our members also aware of the potential Africa has. We've been hearing about the potential Africa has to feed the whole world. How can we tap to this potential? What do we need in terms of fund, in terms of technology, in terms of knowledge, in terms of an ecosystem where it can help a producer produce better, where it can help investor find great opportunities, and create a great opportunities for this kind of networking where each can benefit from the others. This is what we are doing in the group, and this is what we'll be continuing, as I said, strengthen and growing this ecosystem, mainly in two areas. One, one is how can we create an innovation hub in the UAE, and specifically in Dubai. Why do we always bring innovation from abroad? What stops us from exporting innovation from here? We've been able to attract more than 6,500 companies to participate in Gulf Food. What stops us from exporting innovation? Nothing. This is one thing, innovations. The other thing, in how can we create a platform where we can make it a place for major transaction to take place here? I hope I'm not exceeding the 5 minutes. I did already. These are the two main areas which we are looking for. Innovation, and to create it as an exporting hub. Second is making major transaction to take place here. Entrepreneurial, how can we find the right investor to grow his company? Companies where they're looking for merger, joint venture. How can we give them the platform to find the right partner? Companies looking for acquisitions to grow market share, to grow their landscape. How can we give them this opportunity for them to choose from? As I said, we have a great opportunities to create this ecosystem and make all the parties who are related to this sector to benefit from. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Luther, and I'm going to ask that you be joined. I wonder if Princess Adefulera is still in the room to join our panelists, speaker, and Mr. Walid. If not, we'll continue with that presentation. Absolutely, yes. One of the things I want us to keep in mind as we transition into the next session, which is a very important one, is this. 65% of all the arable land left in the world is in Africa. Arable land, plenty of water, and the labor. It's a no-brainer when it comes to food and the agribusiness. Africa indeed can feed the world. It's about synergies, bringing the best of money, the best of ideas, and the best of technology together to create the transformation and the revolution that we do expect in this space. With that being said, I'm going to invite two of our presenters, because what we've done in the interest of time is to combine the panel on investments and agriculture. There's a synergy there, and I think you'll find it to be most productive. But I'm going to ask that our moderators, Mr. Edgar Insingoma, Partner and Head of International Development, Advisory Services and ESG at KPMG East Africa, come onto the platform, as well as his co-moderator, Tracy Lane, Director, Climate Change and Sustainability, KPMG. Both of them will be leading this conversation, and I'll hand it over to them to introduce their panelists. Once again, please give our moderators a warm Dubai welcome and appreciation. Edgar, Tracy, over to you.
As we wait for the communication, allow me invite my two panelists. I'll start with you, Mary. Mary, please join us. Mary Kamari is from the Trade and Development Bank, and she's the Group Executive, Corporate Affairs and Investor Relations. Welcome to this discussion. And the next one is Yofi from Ghana. Yofi is the Chief Executive Officer, Ghana Investment Promotion Center, and they're here to discuss matters of investments. I'd like to hand over to Tracy to invite the other panelists to discuss matters of agriculture.
Thank you. So let me invite my panelists, please. We have Professor Dr. Ahmed El-Tigani Al-Mansouri, the founder and CEO of Al-Rawabi Dairy. We also have Dr. Christopher Cleverly, president of Tingo International Holdings. And we have Mr. Alexander Allegre, CEO of Grazit. Welcome.
Gentlemen and ladies, we short of time, but as the MC talked about it, agriculture and finance are so much related. And we want to be precise this afternoon and start with the finance. COP28 has talked a lot about finance. And I know you have learned, you have listened about a lot of finance in terms of financing projects and attracting investments in Africa. I want to start with you, Mary. When you look at all this is happening, are there opportunities for green finance in Africa? And what is different that you are doing, or what the Trade and Development Bank is doing in Africa, which we have not had? Over to you, Mary. I hope there is a microphone there.
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, I will just go straight to talk about infrastructure deficit is spoken for. Everyone has talked about it here, and there's also opportunity to finance these projects. So at TDB, we've intervened in the adaptation and mitigation space, that is in the renewable sector. Under the renewable sector, we have the hydro, we have the solar, we have the wind. And this, of course, requires financing. Where are we getting the financing? I think everyone has talked about the financing, the challenges of the financing, the cost and access, and speed as well. So I will talk about something that has not spoken for the whole week at COP, what we've done at TDB. This infrastructure finance in the green space requires innovation. What is that innovation? The innovation is what we did was to issue green shares. we've not heard about the shares throughout. So at TDB, we were very proactive to issue green shares, and this was built on the pilot phase that we had when we had targeted pension funds 10 years ago to issue shares to untargeting pension funds in our member states. And we were able to raise money, over $270 million in the targeting pension funds. And building onto that in relation to green growth, we were able to issue green-themed capital, which is green shares, to leverage it to be able to access and generate green assets in the infrastructure space. So we've issued those green shares, and one of the anchor investor was here this morning was AFDB, the African Development Bank, were the first one to actually issue those shares and also buy those shares. And in addition to that, the innovation we had, we also got another entity and investor to come into that shares, as well as to create a project preparation facility where we are seeing challenges in the infrastructure space to find development capital. So in short, what I can say is infrastructure finance and green financing requires soft and patient capital.
Thank you, Mary. I want to come to you, Yofi. From where you sit and this aspect of embracing green finance, where do you see the challenges which we have to address as Africa to be able to accelerate this green financing in Africa?
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting question, but I would like to start with a little bit of disruption of the concept first and foremost. For us in Africa, and I hope I can speak largely for most of my African brothers and sisters, when you look at our development or transformation agenda, all the issues that have been outlined by the 17 SDGs have always been our development objectives. They haven't differed in any way or form. And so for us, what is now termed SDGs has always been our normal development agenda. And I think in more recent times, the fact that, you know, we've had this migration, it started with the MDGs and then metamorphosized the SDGs, sometimes creates a little bit of confusion in what animal we are dealing with. But we all agree that beyond that, we, at least for climate change, we can all see the effect and the impact. And so we recognize that. But if you take a country like Ghana, I mean, we're the first country globally to mainstream our SDGs to our budgetary system. So we recognize that. And subsequently, what has happened is that for most African countries, they've had to, outside their normal funding, should I say, schedules and funding mechanisms, have to now reconstruct alongside what we call green and sustainability to access funds into those areas. And so that in itself is a challenge. And secondly, for most countries, we've seen these concepts more as government concepts and not translated them directly into the private sector. And so today, when I speak to major private sector players and I speak to them about green finance, they really wonder, I mean, what's green finance? What does it really mean? And you then have to go backwards to try and explain what the concept is all about. But for them, those are real issues that they've had to deal with all the time, and it's nothing new. But we do recognize that in the bid to accelerate, you know, global convergence on achieving the SDGs, and by the way, we are way far back. We haven't achieved even a quarter of the SDGs, and it looks like the other remaining quarter out of the 50% that have been touched at all are receding in progress. So for them to get into that space means that it's a new conversation that we need to have. There are challenges, basically land tenure systems, transportation, infrastructure. For example, today, even with the AFCFTA, for it to become very effective, Africa needs to have at least 2 to 5 million new trucks on the road, which in themselves are not climate friendly. And so infrastructure is very important to that. For the investor, it's legal convergence, having a legal regime that gives them comfort. But the biggest barrier, I must say, is trust. Building trust between the African continent and investors. But also the influence of geopolitical forces and culture on the continent is also another mitigating factor. So I think I'll end there.
Thank you so much. I can hear a lot about trust. He has talked about trust, which is very, very important. But one of the other factors he has said, private sector and governments need to work together, whether in finance and agriculture. Let me hand over to Tracy to take us to the agriculture theme.
Thank you, Edgar. So we're here on the sidelines of COP, and food systems have been a very hot topic this year at the COP. More than 130 leaders earlier this week have signed a new declaration on food systems, agriculture, and climate change, which is a commitment to cut carbon emissions from the food systems, but also to revisit policies, look at access to finance, accelerate innovation, and crucially strengthen the multilateral trade system. And I think all of our speakers up here right now could address all of those topics or touch on all of those at least. But let's start first with Ahmed from Al Rawabi Dairy. So Al Rawabi Dairy is the largest dairy company in the UAE and has diversified now into fruit juices, meat, and other products. Can you tell us a little bit more about what opportunities you see for trade and investment in Africa's food sectors, especially in light of the developments around the African Continental Free Trade Agreement that we heard about earlier, and also some of the comments on enhanced commitments around climate finance and finance in general?
While ago I have met with President Museveni, and we applied for a land there for Rawabi in Uganda, and we got, he generously gave us 2,000 acres. And this man is, although he's a president of Uganda, but he's a lover of cows. He is a cattleman. He has got a farm of 200,000 cows. And in the following day after I met with him, he mentioned in the parliament, yesterday I met a businessman from United Arab Emirates, and he told me some of their cows produce 63 liters of milk, while my cows are producing only 4 liters of milk. I gave them a land. I want to learn how can I make my cows producing 63 liters of milk. And I think this is the dilemma in Africa. Africa has got very high population of cattle, but the production is very low. Yani the Zebu cattle average is about 4 liters per day. We are designing a project in Botswana, and the president of Botswana is very keen about this project. We have designed a model for outgrowers contract, and we met with the farmers union there, and they are very also enthusiastic about this project. What we could do there, we would like to get some investment to improve the facilities of the farmers there, because the facilities are also very poor. And if you want to increase the production of these cattle, you need to improve the facilities, the cow comfort, and so on. We have imported here in Dubai about 800 frozen embryos from Wisconsin. And just to make it short, we increase the production, the average production of our cows here from 8,000 to 11,000 in just 3 years. Same thing can be applicable to Africa, but like what you mentioned, the trust and the collaboration between the investors and the private sector should be high, because this requires a lot of high figure for investment. And if we want to go for this outgrowers contract in Botswana, we need at least about $20 to $30 million. But it can improve the standard of living for these poor farmers, improve their production, decrease their cost, and have good standard of living.
So thanks for those remarks. I think the points about enhancing productivity, for example, of the dairy sector, in this case in Africa, through investments, through those linkages and learning from the investment and the investors that can bring new ideas, not just money, but ideas into Africa and new technological innovations. And enhancing productivity is going to be critical for Africa, not just to feed itself, but as we heard earlier, to feed the rest of the world in the future. So speaking again of enhancing productivity, and for example in the dairy sector, a big component of that is inputs, agricultural inputs. So let's move to Alex, and the CEO and founder of Grazeit, which is an agricultural inputs and animal feeds company. Could you tell us a little bit more about innovation in the agricultural space and how innovation such as Grazeit can enhance productivity for increased food production and food security?
Sure. Thank you very much for your presence, all of you. Grazeit was created after a big problem that we encountered a few years ago with COVID, seeing the price of transportation in the world going to the roof, and as well with the war in Ukraine, seeing major shortages all around the world when it comes to supply of livestock feed. And my background is energy, but I always looked closely at the agri-space and thinking, why is everybody focusing on human food when there's as well a big issue on the food of our food, which is livestock food? And at that point of time, we looked at different markets, and we looked at mainly the markets that are reliant on import of feed, like Saudi Arabia, like UAE, like many other countries, like even Switzerland, actually. I didn't know that. But there are so many countries around the world that are reliant on import of alfalfa, of most of the crops that are necessary for livestock agriculture, cattle agriculture. And we looked at the problem, trying to solve it, and we realized that, okay, it's gonna be hard to grow such crops that are water intensive, land intensive, in Saudi, in the UAE, in other parts of the world, in Africa as well. So what are the different solutions? One solution would be to try to find an alternative. The other way would be to try to leverage technology in our benefit. So that's what we did. We basically developed a way to grow a substitute of a portion of the livestock feed. We cannot replace all of it with our solution, but we can replace a portion of it. We can grow it directly where the client is located using hydroponic vertical farms that allows us to basically replace from 15 to 50% of the animal feed, depending on the diet and so on, in a sustainable way. We consume 90% less water, we need 90% less space, and cherry on the cake, it's an eco-friendly, sustainable solution that allows us to reduce CO2 equivalent by 60%. So we digged into that. We worked more than a year and a half with world leaders in nutrition, and I think Dr. Ahmed said it very well. He mentioned the issue of the cows in Africa going from 15 liters, I think, or 16 to 6 liters. And here in the Middle East, actually, they're producing 39 to 43 liters of milk per day. Okay, it's different species, but the nutrition component is very critical as well. It's not only supplying the feed, it's as well nutrition and the knowledge in the nutrition. So we've been focusing on those two aspects, on the production side and as well the guidance, developing a solution that based on different inputs, the species of the cattle of the client, the location, the environment, even the type of floor the cow will sleep on will affect the productivity. And at the end, what matters is productivity. And so we have developed a whole solution. We're already now working with a dairy leader in Saudi with a plan to expand. Our goal is to grow to places that are reliant on import. And I've worked a lot in Kenya. I know that in Kenya, for example, livestock feed was a big issue because of lack of rain, lack of available grass. And there are different ways to skin a cat. And in Kenya, we looked at a different model where instead of building a big facility for one big player, which is our core business model, there we would work for aggregated small farmers. We will have one facility to supply to all of them a portion of the feed, But it's a portion, it's not all, but it's always an important step. And we're looking as well at growing alternative feed to complement the whole, we call it TMR, the whole feed mix of the cattle, to be able to increase local content or local security. So yeah, this is how we kind of apply technology to that space.
Thank you. I think that sounds like a critical new opportunity for the sector, both for enabling export, enabling efficiencies in the sector. Let's now, sort of keeping a little bit with the topic of inputs and tying it to the finance area, let's move to Chris from Tingo International Holdings. Tingo is an agri-fintech company operating in West Africa. Can you tell us a little bit more about the role of fintech in climate-smart agriculture and how that can help enhance farmers and other agriculture actors, their access to finance, both for enhanced production, but also for enhancing opportunities for broader trade?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that often the solutions that we look for in climate tend to be aimed at institutions rather than at individuals. And really it's the individual that actually has to make the difference. So unless you actually identify the individual and you educate the individual and you give the incentive to the individual, then change isn't going to happen. The only way that you can do that and create democratic distribution is through technology. Why? Because you haven't got the identity, you haven't got the platform, you haven't got the communication, and you haven't got the incentive. So until those are actually digitized, then you don't really stand much of a chance of doing that. So Tingo International Holdings, subsidiary Tingo, is a platform which we have leased out 12.5 million phones out to farmers in Nigeria and outside of Nigeria. They each have a smartphone. On it they can take their inputs, their fertilizers, their pesticides, their seeds, their seedlings, and then they can sell out their fruit, their vegetables, and everything else on a marketplace that we've developed called Nawassa. On top of that, we have a layer called Tingo Pay, which we do with Visa, and that allows them to buy and sell. We're now going to input into that an e-wallet, the world's first decentralized Web3 wallet, and that'll allow them as farmers to be able to perhaps even get carbon credits synthetically and put through against their behavior. So instead of just the hedge funds and the institutions being able to play this game of chess called climate, the people actually have to work with resilience. The people who have to work with mitigation will get the benefit. And so that's something that we're trying to work to now. In terms of the other things, production increases because waste decreases when people know that they can trade. So to enable them to trade, we've also started on the buy side, we're doing processing. We started doing a lot of rice processing. We probably will turn out to be one of the biggest rice processors this year in Nigeria. And we buy rice, and by doing that, it allows people to grow more because they know they've got to buy it. If you drive around anywhere in Africa, you'll see triangles of tomatoes stacked up on outside people's houses. And those tomatoes, no one's going past to buy them, and they're just going to go to waste. So being able to create a ready market is the key to climate mitigation. And being able to benefit and incentivize people through digital tactics is probably the best way that I know of ensuring people do the right thing.
Thank you for that. I think that's a really critical point that you've made on that confidence in being able to make an investment decision down at the individual level, and that scales right up. All of that accumulates into major impact across the food security space, but also in terms of climate resilience. If I may pass it back down for an additional comment from the...
Thank you. I know we are running out of time, and do you have a final comment?
Yes, I do have a final comment. And it's an enigma that everybody concedes. And every year you have an Africa conference in a developed country. There's FOCAC, there's TICAD, there's Compact with Africa, etc., etc. And everybody recognizes that Africa is an attractive place to do business, an attractive investment opportunity. Yet last year, foreign direct investments to Africa dropped by 42%. Total FDI to Africa is less than 5% of the global amount. So there must be a certain disconnect that we need to break. Well, I don't know what it is, whether it's a hypocrisy of the global markets, because Africa's ratings, when you look at Africa's ratings, they are all down. But somehow everybody says this is the most attractive place to do business. I personally tested that Africa will be the world's savior because it has all the elements that have been spoken about this morning that the world needs. If it's transition minerals into clean energy, Africa has the minerals, we name them platinum, cobalt, coltan, chromium, copper, gold. Africa has it. If it's the lithium that you need for battery, Africa has it. And if it's the market to absorb the, Africa has it. If it's the remaining arable land to feed the world, Africa has it. If it has the natural elements to solve climate change, Africa is the best endowed. I mean, our solar radiation is the highest anywhere in the world. So without doubt, this is a continent that you cannot ignore. So why is there still a decrease in FDI? And now to add more to it is that now we have to redefine investments into green and non-green. It's a major challenge for the continent. But I'll tell you, this is the first continent that is looking outward. And most everybody else is looking outward. And that is why I say Africa would be the world's savior. The problems of Africa will be the solutions for the world's growth.
Thank you, panelists. We want to thank each and every one of you for having taken time to be with us. Allow me at this point hand over to our MC. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Edgar. Thank you, Tracy Lane. Thank you to our expert panel for your contributions, your insights, and for your inspirational stories of great success. The future ahead is bright. The future is African, and the potential is, the sky's not the limit. I think it goes beyond the sky. At this point, I'm going to call on Mr. Walid Al-Falahi and Princess Adefulire to present trophies, mementos to our panelists, as well as the moderators who've done an excellent job in such a short period of time. Thank you very much. Mr. Walid Al-Falahi, there you are. The guests are yours. All right, thank you very much. We're going to take a very quick final shot in just a moment. If you could pass on the trophies and mementos. I will take one short 5-minute word and bring this conference to a formal close. All right, could we position ourselves? Does everybody have a trophy? There we go. Fantastic. All right. In 5. I'm still on duty. No, I'll take care of that. Thank you very much. Let me just move the... Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much. We just have a very short remark coming up next, and I'd like to use the opportunity to invite to the podium to give very brief, and the emphasis is on brief. I'm going to select the type font Arial, type size 72, bold, Mr. Faisal Mkhize, Chief Executive Relationship Banking at Absa Group, for his short remarks. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Program Director. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I think I know that I'm standing between you and lunch, and it's been a long day, but some few comments to make is that, you know, we are very grateful for the speakers for giving us some insight with regards to what is happening in the continent in terms of opportunities and areas of agriculture and obviously areas of new energy finance. You know, we are very excited that we've had an opportunity to engage and also listen to some of the new trends that are happening in this space. We believe that such conversations give us an opportunity to engage, to learn, so that you can be able to replicate some of the best practices, perhaps, that exist in other parts of the continent. So it's an exciting time for us. Maybe just a quick comment from the work that we do in Absa Bank down in South Africa is that what we try and do to make sure that we are able to win in this space is that we look at the challenges of energy shortages as an opportunity for us to really roll out our capital, persuade other funders, to be able to provide finance in this space so that we can move the continent going forward. I might just say that we've seen enormous amount of growth in this space and will continue to grow, and it's exciting space for us because what it does, it also gives us an opportunity so that we can be able to reskill some of our young people to participate in terms of solar installation so that they are not found without work in the space. So we're very grateful. We're very happy that we've listened to our speakers who has given us insight in terms of opportunities that comes in this environment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for your very short remarks. I'm going to invite Mr. Walid Al-Falahi and Emily. Is she still here with us? Oh, there she is, right behind me. Please give Emily a warm round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm just going to hand over in a few moments. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished excellencies. Thank you for your patience. Allow me to make these very short remarks before we come to the close. We really understand the nexus, the connection between body, mind, and the stomach. So we've been treated today to quite a plethora of African proverbs, many of them that are connected to trade and business. So it befalls me to end with a final proverb, and that is this. In Africa, we tend to say that when the stomach is empty, nothing else can get into it or into the mind. So I think we've been fed quite enough, and the stomach is rumbling. So in a few moments, we're going to exit the room, go upstairs, and treat ourselves to a sumptuous lunch. But before we do that, I'd like to invite the convener and the visionary of this Sustainable Trade Africa Conference to the podium to provide closing remarks. Putting together a conference is never easy. It's easy to come in, sit down in the chairs, have a wonderful time, but a tremendous amount of work, hard work, slugging, goes into making this possible. This is the first of its kind. It's a historic event, and I believe that Sustainable Trade Africa is going to go on from strength to strength. You've been part of history. We look forward to having you in future events, and at this point, it gives me great pleasure to invite to the podium to provide closing comments Mr. Walid Al-Falahi.
I think I'm a little bit smarter than this. I will not be the one, I want to be the last one. So for me, Africa Free Continental Trade Area, especially His Excellency Wankeli Mana, been a guidance, been a support to me. But he's the boss. But this lady, actually from the start, we worked together. Then also the Africa Exim Bank team came along and they supported us. Then Africa Development Bank came and so on. I mean, just the gentleman from ABSA, where is he? You know, they came along. Then, you know, James Mwangi, I found out that he was in Abu Dhabi. I went to him, I said, no, you have to come. James is a pioneer, so, you know, I don't know, I hope Alex didn't run away. Huh? Okay. Alex, don't hide, man, I need you. Let us do something. Everybody, can you come up? Come forward. If you have one floor, just come forward. Everybody come forward. Please, I mean, I think after a whole day, this is one favor you will do for me. And the people outside, just come in. Where is Yufi Grant? Man, he's Yufi Grant, Antonio Sil. Start, and I'll finish.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walid. Mine is just to say that on behalf of His Excellency Wamkele Mene, the Secretary General of the AFCFTA Secretariat, it's really been a pleasure to work with Mr. Walid. I like calling him Mr. Walid because I don't want to try the second name. I might butcher it too much. So it's really, really been a pleasure to work together with his team. And of course, there was a few of us also who are involved in it. There was, when we met at the African Climate Summit in Nairobi, and we started discussing in depth with Mr. Walid what can really be done during the COP28. We didn't know it can become this big, but I think Mr. Walid had something under his sleeve that we are now seeing in action. And we were together with some colleagues, Jane Kabaki from Nomlolo Consulting, and other friends. And we sat there, we just started chatting with Mr. Walid on what can be done and how we can actually bring in the nexus between trade and climate change related issues. And to me, this is really something that has shown me that together we can actually make it, and together we can move forward. And let me also go with the proverbs, because they're being said in Africa. We have a proverb that says, if you want to go quickly, you go alone, and you will get there faster. But if you want to go and, you know, like get everybody on board and move together, you will then be able to go far, because then together you can be able to achieve a lot. Thank you very much. And Mr. Walid, I look forward to future work with you. Thank you very much.
Actually, I wanted to be the last, but I think then I realized, oops, I cannot forget the people really who pushed me the most, the people who made it happen with us, is Afri-Exim Bank. For some of you who don't know Afri-Exim Bank, it's a very interesting bank. A bank then, you know, if they just decide to partner with you, you have a very interesting business that you can take it to the bank. So Emma, my sister, she been on my head. She's been supporting me, making sure that it happened. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think for me, the key takeaway in all of this is that collaboration, partnership, collaboration. It's clear that together we can go far. What we've seen demonstrated here by the presence of the various multilateral, the DFIs that were here, the private sector and all the stakeholders that have been present today, is just a shared demonstration that without collaboration, without multi-stakeholder engagement, we cannot make this happen. And for me, that's the big takeaway. And I hope that from this, when we meet, we would have a more progress, would have made progress and would have a success story to share together. And we would have driven the agenda of the continent jointly together. Thank you.
Alex, you are the wheeler and dealer. Come sit here. I need you here. Come. You know, I think me and Nasser, we spoke 1 month ago. I don't know where he called me. He said, "Where are you in Africa, man? You're like Magellan. You're going from one place to another." I'm glad he's here. Guys, these projects and these events, it's not about speaking. I can tell you I made a deal already. I'm not kidding. I made a deal. I came here with a plan. I have a plan to do something. So you build around it all the infrastructure, all the ideas. For what? For you to do a deal. Among the people who came, you start zooming in and you start seeing there is opportunities. See, the idea that we build this, basically, you need a place where people gather, they talk business. The problem, a lot of times, we talk business more than we do business. I mean, I don't know if how many people agree that we do more talking? Oh, I was not anticipating the whole room, but it's okay. Guys, today I have 3 to 4 projects in Africa. All of them came as a result of an event. All of them. Why? Because I go and I start looking at who's there. I come prepared. I work through it. So when I built this sustainable trade, I realized that COP will gather a lot of people. Will gather smart people. Will gather, see, Professor Orama or Odesina. These are very high-profile guys. On a normal way, you cannot sit with them, and they're too busy. So you build platforms to be able to build these opportunity with these people. My objective to ask everybody to be here, I want to build this. It's not a foundation. I don't know. I don't have the mind now to say what we're going to do with it. But I want that I think, I don't know who was mentioning it. Salih Luta, I think he was saying, we need a platform to be able to bridge. Guys, Middle East in particular has product, whether it's manufactured product, whether investment, whether needs and requirement from Africa. I'll give you an example. Who's from Kenya here? Okay. I have a habit, after I finish my trip, I go to Ngara. I don't know if you know Ngara. Ngara is a market in Nairobi. So I go and this bargaining becomes, I was involved in Dragon Mart, so it became a natural in me that I have to negotiate. So I go and I buy, they have an avocado called Jumbo. Jumbo is one of the, You know, you just put it, it goes so smooth. Jumbo is that big, and how much it cost without bargaining, huh? 30 cents. If you put another 30 cents for shipping, logistics, that same jumbo is selling here for 24, 28 dirhams. To bring it here, it doesn't cost you 1 dirham. So the continent has a lot of massive opportunities. And I tell people, don't invest in Africa. You say, why you say this? No. First trip, go as a tourist. Don't go as a businessman. Because if you go as first trip as a businessman, you will fail. Why? Because a lot of people come with the mentality of Dubai. Dubai is a different planet. Dubai is a different, I will not name which president, but I was asked by one president. He said, I want to make my country like Dubai. I said, impossible. He said, why? I said, this is a monarchy. We have long planning, long term. But the opportunity in Africa is, if you are talking about 3%, 4%, I'm talking to Nasser, you know, just 3, 4, 5%. In Africa, they don't talk these numbers. They talk 25%. Yes, Alex? These are the numbers that, so, I apologize. So, I think just take your first trip to Africa as a tourist. Go, enjoy, see. This very good friend of mine just arrived. Mr. Samuel, my honor to see you, sir. So look at it as a trip where it opens your eyes. I mean, sometimes I joke with some of my friends in Kenya. Sorry, Alex, I'm picking on you too much. I said to them, if you just export weather in a container, you guys will make millions. You know? Apologize. So my vision out of this is very simple. What we want your feedback. We want your thought. We want your how to make it better. My vision is very simple, to connect people to do business, to connect people to do project. Next phase, I'll bring a project and we'll do project matchmaking. We'll bring people and we'll put them together. You know, I have to admit, you know, when we launched, I think there was no more space to sit. But a venue like this, sorry to say, in Expo doesn't exist. You know? So we decided this showed that people who came there interested, excited. So, but the next one, we are planning, our vision is UNGA 79. Kunal, you know, I want to go and you know, sometimes you have to use the right term. I don't want to go and invade US. No, this is not my, I want to go and put a stamp in US that Africa is here. Africa is more opportunity, more capabilities, and bring the right, you know, always I get challenged. They say, you talk about Africa, show us the projects. So I'll pressure Mr. Yufi Grant to bring what? To bring the projects, to bring the investment map that shows people where is the business and where is the opportunity. I think I appreciate you guys for being here, for giving us, you know, your time, giving us your attention. That's valuable stuff. You know, you cannot say thank you for people for their time and attention. We will come back to you very soon. We are working to make sure that we come back with a very solid idea. Before I forget, Alex, if you can stand up, please. Alex is my partner and my colleague. Alex, yesterday, myself and Alex, we launched something called Africa Policy Center. Africa Policy Center is something that we also going to come to you with what we are doing with Africa Policy Center. Yesterday was the signing for the first branch outside Africa, yes? It was signed with Abu Dhabi University and also Abu Dhabi Chamber to launch the first Africa Policy Center in UAE. That's actually one vision that we came up with for Africa. Also, we are working to launch something called Africa Business Club with I don't know where's Emma. She's here. Emma? We launch Africa Business Club. Within a month, two, we will share also the vision behind it. So this is some of the initiative that we're trying to do. So I really appreciate everything, appreciate everybody. And we are, if you don't have our emails, please ask for it, and we are there for you, not 100%, 150% supporting what you are, how you are supporting us here. Thank you very much, and I appreciate it. Guys, I will start, if you don't mind, I will start with the people who worked with us in making it happen. Then we need to have a family picture. Did you realize one thing? Have you seen your tags? Can everybody look at this tag? How many of you are VIP? No, I want to know. I want raise hand. How many of you VIP? Riha, Janal, I asked you for 10 people VIP. Now you're making the whole room VIP? Huh? Everybody's in the room VIP. That's exactly what it is. You guys are our VIP. Everybody is our VIP. So I really appreciate it. It's been a long day, but thank you very much for your support. And we will see you very soon, inshallah. Alex. Emma.